Platt here. Fine. We don't see him yet. Hinckley here. Let's.
Uh-oh.
We confine ourselves to say procedural schedule type issues rather than whether we like the contents or not. Mr. Chairman, who is they? They, the steering committee. I'm sorry. Okay. So yeah, just as a quick reminder, where this all started. Oh, okay. A steering committee composed of one county commissioner and 3 city councilors was carved out. Gosh, almost a year ago now. There were 3 of these kind of subgroups reflecting the more cooperative spirit between the 2, and they kept it at less than a quorum of either group so that they could meet a little less formally. And one of them was assigned specifically to the CAP. And so they've been the ones who have been trying to set these aspirations for a joint development by the AC, city planning, and us. So yeah, they're kind of the top level guidance, as you no doubt picked up on. I've tried to press them for putting a little more flesh up the bones that let's all cooperate, but we're getting there. So yes, good question. That's the day. And then whether we'll get through the whole agenda or not, I'm not sure. I would like to at least touch each piece, particularly on that the bylaws and rules of procedure. I know Commissioner Kennedy had been interested in that. So before we go home, let's at least get what do you want us to be thinking about? What should we be looking at? Mr. Gertz put Teton County and ours and Laramie counties in the packet, so we got something to work with, but I don't think we'll resolve it today, but let's just try to hit that. All right, those are my only thoughts on the agenda. Others, additions, deletions, I know striking something from the agenda is as appropriate a motion and amendment as adding something. So what do we think of the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the agenda with the deletion of number 5 under public applications, Taylorfield subdivision, per the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a second? I second. And is there further discussion of the motion? Does staff want to explain what the point of the deletion was? Was there something?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the notice was deficient on this application. So we have to postpone it until we can make sure the notice is properly handled.
No substantive problem with what we saw in the packet, just that we missed a base to move around. Yep. Okay, thank you. Other thoughts on the motion? Seeing, hearing none. All in favor of accepting the agenda as amended, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. We have a whole series of minutes, September 14th, 21st, 22nd to look at. I guess let's take them one by one just to be orderly about it. Are there corrections, amendments, deletions, comments on those September 4th minutes? Hearing, seeing none, I'm open to a motion to approve.
So moved.
I second. Been moved and seconded to accept the September 14th minutes as distributed. The discussion of that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. September 21, same question. Comments, corrections, additions, amendments from anyone? Motion to approve. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve these minutes, September 21.
Second.
Thank you. Then moved and seconded that we approve the September 21 special meeting of minutes as distributed. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. September 22 special meeting. Corrections, additions, amendments. Anyone?
I move to approve those minutes.
Second. Been moved and seconded to approve the September 22nd special meeting minutes as distributed. Further discussion of the motion? Hearing, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Disclosures, conflicts of interest. Just a reminder, and that reminder comes from reading those other sets of bylaws that went around. The point of this item on the agenda is twofold. One is for any of the commissioners to share a potential conflict of interest, but also if they have opportunity to learn something about, say, the applications that the rest of us wouldn't have been privy to. So the spirit of what we're doing here is if you've learned something that would affect our voting, that the rest of us would not have access to, now would be a time to disclose that fact. So let's do a round robin. Mr. Kennedy?
None?
Ms. Hanning?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure in the meeting minutes from the last meeting because I joined late, who declared that they were in the APOZ. Because I am a homeowner who on one map, we would show up as being in the APOZ. In another map, we show up as being outside the APOZ. Based on our well log, I've always considered us outside the APOZ because it indicates about 135 feet of Satanka. So I don't know if you included me in that declaration or if there are two other on the commission who are also, situated just on the other side in the APOZ. But our property, oddly enough, is one of the very weirdly cut out areas over by the spur wells. That it looks odd that some of the land is missing from where the boundary is. But I want to let you know we've always been outside that boundary, even though the boundary looks very suspiciously like it goes around our property on purpose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think I volunteered for you that you were inside the existing APOZ. Perhaps I misstated that, but
I think
we did
it's
have a
on the city map, because the city and county maps differ, which is why this exercise that we're working on is so important with the cap update. In the city map, we were considered outside of it. In the county map, we were considered inside of it. But I always relied on my drill log from the state engineer office to consider ourselves 135 feet isn't cutting it very close. So thanks.
Okay, thank you. Again, just point of clarification, in the November 21, the city and the county boundaries of the APOC were rectified. So there's lots of boundaries floating around there. The one that's today is in place is the same, just so the record's clear on that. And Mr. Fine also, and unequivocally would find himself within the APOZ. Mr. Kennedy shared with us that he is not. He's outside to the west. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I think we're all clear on where everybody lives and how they're voting. So let's move on to public applications. The Taylor Field subdivision has been removed, but we still have the Romeo's Ridge subdivision. The procedure that we'll use is one that we have established over the years, but we'll start with a report from staff, followed by comments, questions from the commissioners. The applicant will be invited to come forward to add anything to that or stand for questions if any of us have any. Then we'll open it to the public if there are public comments. If you are commenting as a member of the public on a particular application, please state your name and address and confine yourself to 3 minutes and stay on topic, noting that there's an opportunity for just general comments on the state of affairs in Albany County at the end of our meeting. Once we close the public comment period, we'll have a short discussion amongst the commission and come to a decision on whether we are approving, denying, approving with conditions, or tabling. So let's proceed to consider the Romeo's Ridge subdivision. And can we have a report from staff?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. And commissioners. Lisa Stevenson is the applicant and owner of the property in question. The location of the property is 19 BWJ Road. She's requesting an approval of a preliminary and final plat and subdivision permit. This property is currently zoned rural residential. And there's currently a barn on the property. Both lots will be accessed from BWJ Road. A number of reviewers looked at this subdivision application. The assessor's office, folks didn't have any concerns. The county engineer made comments that were rectified during the review process. Albany County Fire District number 1 had no concerns. Laramie Rivers Conservation District, Holly Dyer, resource specialist, discussed the vegetation, erosion, and wells. WYDOT, or Wyoming Department of Transportation, Taylor Court District 1 traffic engineer says no WYDOT access will be permitted and lots will need to use BWJ Road. Mentioned work in the right of way and drainage. And all these comments are found in this packet. Summary of permit requirements. Water they have, the applicant that they would like to use, their domestic wells will be what's proposed. And then septic systems are proposed for sewer. Storm drainage report was reviewed or was provided and reviewed by the county engineer, provided by the applicant and reviewed by the county engineer, I should say. There's electrical power in the area, postal service exists in the area. There's no proposed roads for this subdivision. They will just use the existing BWJ road. There's a road maintenance provision in Andrew Ridge on the state's covenants, which run with land and will impact this particular subdivision. Fire protection is provided by Albany County. Notice was provided as required. Findings of fact, the findings necessary for approval, applicant responses, and staff analysis of inclusion of required information as referenced in this report are affirmatively adopted as findings that the applicant has provided the board with adequate information that the requested and required findings, documentation, notice, and notations have been satisfied by the applicant and same are incorporated herein. That is a long sentence. I'm just going to say it. I'm not looking at you, Matt. Anyways, conclusions of law, the applicant is proceeding in accordance with and in compliance with the requirements of the Albany County Planning and Subdivision regulations. Staff analysis, this is an already developed area. It was developed into 35-acre lots at one point, and I think we just approved another subdivision in the vicinity. And the addition of one lot in this area should not create any substantial impacts to the area. Preliminary and final plats comply with the standards of the county planning and subdivision regulations. Staff recommends approval of the Romeo Ridge subdivision preliminary and final plat application and a subdivision permit adopting and incorporating the staff analysis, findings of fact, and conclusions of law as each are stated in the staff report. So that's the recommendation. There are also other potential motions that can be made found in your staff report. Is there any questions about this project for me? I will note that Joe, this is Joe's project and he worked on this. This is his report and I'm just giving it. So I'll answer questions if I need to.
Okay, questions for Mr. Rich, Mr. Kennedy,
None?
Ms. Hanning?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Gertz. I do have a couple questions. Can you just explain what the origin is of the parcel 1 Andrew Ridge Estates, and now it's block 1, lots 1 and 2 of Romeo's Ridge subdivision? Was this vacated and replatted, or what's the history in the name change, or is it immaterial?
Sure. So Andrew Ridge Estates is actually a survey plat. When the survey plat was created, in order to divide lots that were 35 acres or more, all they had to do was create a survey that had each lot 35 acres or more and then file it with the county clerk. And so this was done under a state exemption. So in my office, we don't consider it a platted subdivision. We consider it more of a plat, basically, that was a survey plat or a record of survey, I guess would be the better term. But it was named Andrew Ridge Estates. So Romeo Ridge is the new subdivision name. So this will actually be a county subdivision under county requirements. And so that's kind of the progression. It was a record of survey that established these 35-acre lots, and now is considered will be a county subdivision named Romeo Ridge subdivisions.
Okay, thanks for answering that. What else then? I guess the other question I have, and I'm probably just getting this property confused with some other ones that recently went through land use change, zoning changes out in this area, where I thought they were going to have to haul water, and that drilling a well wasn't super feasible. Is that not the case in this area? Is drilling a well a feasible thing, or should this be platted to say, that no well will be expected with the land?
That's a good question, Commissioner Henning. What was provided to us in the application materials, in the engineer's report, they do note that they want to use individual wells. Now, whether that's possible or not, I honestly can't say. I know that I've heard that the depth to groundwater here is pretty deep, and that might not be feasible, but without having like someone drill a well out there and tell us that, I don't know if we can say that for certain. But what is on the plat is that there is no proposed domestic water source for the property. And maybe this is an applicant question that you can ask them if they know if water is available on the property. But like I said, we went off the materials that were provided to us by their engineers.
Okay, thanks. So it's still platted to have that exception about supplying water, despite the application saying that they intend to drill wells. Okay, I just want to make sure that it's fairly advertised for how this property is. Thanks. And I guess the last question is probably one that would take our county engineer, but I don't know what your thoughts are. I just noticed this terminology in the stormwater sections that Dwell did for both the item that's been removed tonight and for this, and sort of making a distinction between whether stormwater runoff would be in sheet flow form versus inundation. And I don't know, looking at my own yard in that last storm we had, where I saw plenty of sheet flood flow, those areas also simultaneously looked inundated to me. So I wasn't sure what the distinction is in your mind, or if this is a save it for when we see Jake Schneider online.
Good question. I don't know. I'm not sure what the difference between the sheet flow and the inundation is. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, if the engineers use the same terminology as crop and soil scientists, inundation implies that there's some sort of pooling, that it's, so that, to me, that's the difference there.
Okay, that makes sense, that it has to pool and not just be a steady flow of water of some depth. Thanks, Commissioner Kennedy. All right, thanks you guys. That's all I have on this one.
But
Well, I was also interested in the feasibility of the well, but you've answered that. So I don't have anything further.
and Mr. Thorne's not with us. Let me follow up on that, though. I didn't quite understand the answer. So because this is a small lot subdivision, they aren't going through the DEQ process. Is that correct? Okay. So we don't explicitly ask for an analysis of water supply or wastewater.
Correct.
But I took from Ms. Hanning's statement that there would be something on the plat describing the water supply anyway.
Mr.
Was I
Chairman,
confused about that? Yes, okay.
the plat would merely say that there isn't domestic water. In other words, there's no outside source there.
Right, okay, which is different than alerting the applicant or the buyer to the.
It is listed on the plat, and that's part of the required notice by state law, I think, on sales.
Yes. So the exact verbiage is no proposed domestic water source.
Yeah.
But is
That's what's on the plat.
Yeah, I guess I took from Ms. Hanning's concern that there be something on the plat that would address the feasibility of individual wells. And so the answer is no, there is nothing on the plat that would
Correct.
address that. It simply says you don't have central water.
Correct. And it's not required to have a water source.
Okay, so it's compliant with the rules as they presently stand on that point. Just a couple of comments out of reading the staff report was that I liked the new map you've added.
That was Joe's.
That was Joe. That's what I was trying to describe the other day. It quickly shows us, here's the town, here's the airport, route around Herrick Lane, we're down by the bakery. I mean, we can see that quite quickly without having to go dig up our own Google Earth. And I appreciate the comments from the Conservation District. I assume those are passed on to the applicant, even though we don't make those conditions at all. But there was some good thinking.
Yes, they should be. Not sure if they were.
Okay, but the normal
Not-
process
yeah.
would be that you guys would provide those kinds of
Yeah.
things through to the applicant.
Yeah.
If not, we should certainly do that. So, yeah, nice job there. Otherwise, I had no issues with it. And like Commissioner Hanning recognized it, I think the one we looked at must have been right beside that.
Yeah, I think it's just south of there.
Across the road. Okay.
Was it?
Okay, if there are no other questions for staff, I assume the applicant is with us. Would you like to share your thoughts? Answer the questions that you've heard us bring up.
Talk about the well water. I mean, that's.
Well, yeah, the well water is possible.
You want to step up here and give us your name and
Sure.
this is all being recorded, so we have good record of it. You're on.
Felicia Stevenson, owner and hopefully new sub-developer. No, just kidding. But so as for the well, I guess, a well is possible out there. We are on a high amount of shale, so it will cost a little bit more. We haul our own water right now, but I don't know if that helps answer that question about the well.
Are we correct to understand that many, if not most of the folks in that area are hauling water?
Yes.
As a hydrogeologist, I know the water is hard to come by, and what there is of it is hardly worth the trouble.
Right, exactly. Watson said they'll gladly drill a hole, but I don't know if they'll get it.
If you leave it long enough, it'll fill up with a little bit of water, but, all right, fair enough. Are there other questions, comments for the applicant? Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Platt, Sandy? Why is it called Romeo's Ridge? Is there a story there?
Actually, yes. My heart horse, we finally moved out there and he got to spend his last few years out there. And so he's buried on the top part of the ridge over there. So, well, that might be a cool contribution to him.
That's Romeo. All right, I have nothing else. Seeing, hearing none, thank you very much
Thank you.
for bringing this forward to us. So, good project. Are there public comments? I'm not sure we have one. Do we have people who attend these by Facebook where we don't see them, or is this strictly Zoom?
So there's a YouTube option,
Okay,
and they, yeah, we wouldn't see them.
so we have a certain audience that is visible to us.
Right, and what they see is what we're seeing up here, basically.
Okay, so we'll assume if they wanted to make a statement, they would have come in through the Zoom
Correct.
portal. In which case we have no public. So going once, going twice. End of public comments. What's the pleasure of the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I recommend to the Board of County Commissioners approval of the Romeo's Ridge subdivision preliminary and final plat application, SD-11 of 22. And the subdivision permit adopting and incorporating the staff analysis, findings of fact, and conclusions of law as stated in the staff report.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the application. Discussion of that motion. Anyone? Hearing, seeing none. Mr. Kennedy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Hanning?
Aye.
Mr. Platt?
Aye.
Mr. Stein is absent. Hinckley vote aye. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Good luck with your project. And you don't need to stay for the rest of our little party. You're welcome to. I believe.
We would love to.
Thanks, guys.
Everybody will ask you when you get home, what happens? So,
So in the Board of County Commissioners meeting will be in this same room,
okay.
and I can't remember what the date is, probably
November 1st.
November 1st, probably, yeah.
Do we have any more homework with you guys right now?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Awesome. Cool.
Good. So that will go directly from us to them. It'll show up on their next agenda. Is there a reason to think that would?
Well, it won't be on the next agenda because the next agenda is next Tuesday and it's too
Okay,
late
we've
to
already
get it
said
on that
that.
agenda, but yeah, it'll be on the first.
First
meeting in
Tuesday of
November. November, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks. Okay, current planning projects. First on that list is the CAP update of the process timeline. So, Mr. Gersh, what can you share with us on what's going on with CAP?
All right, so, right now, I mean, there's still, so the public comment period ended on the 8th. Is that right?
I thought it was the 10th, but it's passed anyway.
Whatever, it's ended. So, now the consultant is compiling the public comment and then making changes they feel should be made in accordance with that public comment. And so they're working on that. Sounds like we got 17 or so written comments, which is not too shabby, I guess. I mean, better than kind of the beginning of the process where it was like 2, I think. And yeah. So they're compiling all that, putting that together. They should have us a draft, hopefully within a week or so, so that we can get it to you. And then we have the meeting on October 27th, I believe. Will be a joint meeting with Planning Commission and the Environmental Advisory Committee. And so this,
Planning commissions and the EAC, or correct?
yeah,
Because
Planning
you
and
said
Zoning
singular and I
Commission.
started to get
Sorry,
confused.
Planning and Zoning Commission and Planning Commission and the Environmental Advisory. Yes.
All right.
Yes, sorry. So, so yeah, that meeting's scheduled for Thursday, the 27th, 6 o'clock. Here, or on Zoom, if we can make it. I know some of us, I think the majority can make it, but might be one that can't.
I think city planning continues to hold their meetings exclusively by Zoom.
Yes, yeah.
And I don't know what's the AC doing, do we know?
Because there's kind of being ran by the city folks and they're under their auspices or whatever, they're still also by Zoom. And that's per their council resolution or whatever, so.
Okay, but we will continue as per our, we will have the
Yes.
opportunity to be here or by Zoom.
Yeah, we have the option. Yeah, I will be here to open the doors, so anybody that wants to be in this room can be here. So,
Okay,
so, so that, at that meeting, you guys will just sign off on it and we'll move it up. No, I'm just joking. It could happen. No, it'll be a discussion. It's gonna be well laid out. I know that we're supposed to be getting a draft of the actual progression of the meeting, the agenda, so that's
Wait, so you're saying it's not gonna just be meeting, there's gonna be an actual agenda?
there will be an actual agenda.
Okay.
So, yes,
Very good.
yes.
That's progress.
And the plan is, and we haven't set this up, is to have the chairs of each of the committee meet and review that agenda. And then we'll determine how it's gonna be ran as well, so that we don't get here and it's like, okay, we got 3 chairs in the room, who's gonna chair the meeting, you know? We'll get that figured out as well. So,
I'm very glad to hear that.
so.
Sure you.
Me too.
I would suggest that since EAC is ad hoc, that it be either the planning commission chairman or the planning and zoning commission chair.
Okay, yeah, I mean, and that would make a lot of sense. So, I mean, yeah.
but if there are other, it sounds like this meeting of the chairs has not been scheduled yet, but I'm happy to carry the desires of this commission to that meeting, so duly noted.
Yeah, well, probably gonna get on that meeting, because it's the 27th. Huh?
Yes.
So,
2 weeks from
and then from there on, really, it depends on where we get on this meeting. I mean, I'm guessing that we will then schedule another meeting to discuss and figure things out. And we'll continue to do that until you guys agree to approve something, and then we schedule the 30-day public hearing, or schedule a public hearing with a 30-day notice. And then at that point, it's a public hearing, and then we can make a decision. The only thing scheduled at this time is the October 27th meeting. So,
Have you received any direction on the idea of separating the cap from the regs?
that's something I brought up, I think multiple times. I think you may have brought it up. I don't know. I mean, that might be something that we have to just, or you guys have to just say, hey, we want this separated out.
Okay, just
I'm not sure why it hasn't been, but that's, I don't know.
to remind ourselves, and for correction by Mr. Ayers, the track on which we are proceeding is that we, county planning and zoning, will have to put out for public comment our recommendation for a 30-day review period followed by a public hearing. Then we will certify, if public opinion doesn't sway us from what we recommended, we will certify to the county commissioners. And then for the land use plan, which is the cap, they are statutorily required to have that out for public comment for 16 days. The land use plan,
Or the land is 14 days.
14 days. Yeah. They are required by state statute to put the regulations out for 45 days. So the quickest that regulations can't be finalized by the Board of County Commissioners is 75 days. So it would seem clear that that is not going to happen in calendar year 2022. Did I say that all correctly?
Yes, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you. All right, I will continue to suggest that we bifurcate the process. When I be calling parallel tracks, and again, I'm looking to my colleagues here if they have something to add to that.
That makes sense to me, Mr. Chairman.
And the steering committee will be meeting tomorrow noon, so Mr. Gertz can carry some of these thoughts to that meeting and see if we can get comments back from them. The other thought that I would throw in at this point is, in the interest of moving this thing forward, and there's considerable pressure to stay with it and not go on and on and on. That was just to get it done this year, which I think is just statutorily not within our reach, but let's proceed as best we can. To make best use of that October 27th meeting, I think it would be appropriate if those who are reviewing the plan have specific questions of things they would like to see to help them understand the plan, communicate those to our staff representative. I, for example, asked the county GIS to produce a map of vacant parcels, so that as we look forward, we have some sense of what are the developable lands within the cap. It's not something that's in the cap itself or within the APOC, but I thought it would be helpful for me as I was trying to get my mind around the regulations for bringing a new development forward. So if there are other things that you guys can think of as you're looking at this next draft that staff can help us with, I think it would be appropriate to communicate those. And one of the questions that I asked in a note to the steering committee last week was the involvement of planning staff, city and county, and legal staff. So since we have our representatives at both here, have your offices been involved in development of the recommended regulations that we're seeing in Appendix J of the Stantec draft? You. Okay.
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Because again, speaking for myself, but looking to my colleagues for their feedback, those are two critical hurdles that I think the regulations at least have to go. Do you, Mr. Gertz, anticipate coming to us with a staff recommendation with regard to either the cap or the regulations?
The regulations for sure. Yeah, I mean, probably obviously the cap as well. I'll do a review as well. And I do have a copy of the regulations. Honestly, I just haven't had a chance to go through them. And where it's been public comment up to this point, I'm not sure. That was I mean, once it comes out, then I think me and Matt are better set up to like review those and figure out where we want to go or what we think is good and not good. So.
Yeah, no, I see this as a transition out of the consultants.
Sure.
Into our own. I think there's been some confusion on the public comment period, but I think it's been clear to me at least that was the consultants' opportunity to require public comment. That in no way was part of our statutory requirements. So how do you anticipate that working? Will you have a recommendation for us at this 27th meeting?
It may depend on when he sees the draft.
Yeah, no, we're speculating here to some extent. I'm just trying to get our ducks as lined up as best we can to make best use of everyone's time.
Right. It wouldn't be until we actually take action at a later date.
Mr. Chairman, I guess my only concern with the separation of those is going to be you will need to go back through the plan when you work the regulation. And some of us don't like to plow the same furrow twice.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's decide that as we go along. My thought was that we want to make sure that the plan is the technical basis for the regs,
Yeah.
so that we aren't ricocheting back and forth. At the same time, there's a great deal of the plan. I would think perhaps even the majority of it is contaminant inventory, all of the bringing the science up to date, things that should be pretty well in order. And from those, we then develop our regulations. Mr. Aaron?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that, to your comment, Mr. Kennedy, the way that Stantec has sort of written this, I mean, it is inherently duplicative between Appendix
Sure.
J and just the text of the regulation. So the way, as it's proposed, I don't really see a way around that plowing twice.
Okay.
Well, and then at least the way we've done it in the county before, and most jurisdictions do, the plan gets adopted, then you develop your regulations. But this is kind of a parallel track, I guess. We're trying to do this all in one fell swoop, sort of. And so, yeah, this is a little bit different. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you usually do look at it twice. So.
I had a conversation with Commissioner Chair Gosar, and he was certainly a Commissioner Kennedy's frame of mind, just thinking about it. Everybody's got it up in their minds. Let's run it to ground. At the same time, he was pushing for getting something accomplished sooner rather than later. And those two are somewhat in conflict with each other. But I'll carry that to our chairs meeting, and maybe that's something that will be on that agenda for that next meeting. We're just looking at my own notes. Commissioner Kennedy, for example, you requested a red line of the regs, which I thought was a good suggestion. So that's the kind of thing that I think would qualify as one of the tools that we would like to have at that October meeting to proceed with. That just makes it clear what we're doing. So, other thoughts on how to prepare ourselves for that meeting, understanding that we'll have an opportunity to review Stantec's latest.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Platt.
I have a layperson's perspective. I've read through the document several times. I don't have any concerns with what I see. The one thing you mentioned before about unnecessary SSI requirements, register as me, I would not like to see undue and unnecessary costs thrust upon a particular person, to determine geology for the whole county. But otherwise, I'm relying now on you and Ms. Hanning to provide some expertise about whether there are salient issues that I should be more concerned about.
Yeah, again, looking at the procedure out of the substance, I would expect Stantec would make a brief presentation to us introducing the changes since the last draft. And then that would give us something to move forward with. And I've talked to the chair of the county city planning commission and of the EAC, and I think we're all headed in the same general direction of let's move forward as best we can, but nobody's interested in stampeding the process to beat the calendar. Okay, so any other thoughts on the same procedure, timeline? I'm encouraged to hear that there will be a meeting of the chairs so that we will be able to respond to Mr. Blatt's concerns that we have an agenda and an orderly meeting. I think to talk to Mr. Kennedy's point, I think we talked at the last meeting about maybe alternating chairs, and that would probably fall into our organization to provide the chair of that meeting. But I expect that to be the case.
I have a question on the timeline for Mr. Ayers. What notice or other constraints are on the planning commission and or city council relative to what ours are? I know everybody's talked about doing things in parallel, and I don't think their notice requirements are the same, so I just wanted to, since are they actually going to parallel us, or are they going to jump ahead and then assume that we'll follow?
If I recall the statute correctly governing their planning commission, it just says following a public hearing. I don't think it gives that same 30 or a specific notice window like our controlling statutes do. And obviously anything city, I defer wholly to Mr. Souther. Is very competent.
Yeah, I would just add, I think what they do, and maybe Commissioner Hanning was on the planning commission, right?
Correct.
So, but from my understanding, and you can correct me if you know more about this, Commissioner Hanning, is that they actually do their, they just publish before their meeting. They do like automatic, like they publish like 15 days or 16 days before their meeting, and then they can have a hearing and they can do it all at the same time. So it's not like ours where we have to, where the planning commission doesn't have to actually meet, in my understanding, and say, we like this document, now you publish. They just publish it, and then they meet and they do their hearing, and then they move on. So ours is a little bit different. It's like, I think you guys have a little bit more authority, and maybe not authority, but just say in how it goes forward. Because it's statutory, everything you guys do is statutory, and the planning commission has their statutes, but like, it's pretty loosey-goosey, and they kind of figure it out themselves. Maybe not loosey-goosey.
They have 3 readings, for example, for council.
Yeah, at the council,
I don't know if they can have those in the space of a day or faster spread over a month. But anyway, that's, as you say, that's not our department.
Yeah. But how it runs parallel, I mean, everybody's gonna hurry up and wait, I think.
But there are certain aspects of the regulations that can't be identical.
Right.
That they, septic simply aren't allowed in the city limits, for example. Okay, so other thoughts, questions on that? It does sound like we will move forward in good faith and hope for the best. But I'll let them know that we're on board. We'll do what we can. There may be a special meeting or 2 in these joint meetings. As we saw in our beginning of this meeting, 3 sets of minutes. We've all got other things to do with our lives besides go to meetings. So we'll try to keep our eye on that ball as well. Okay, moving on. The next item on the agenda was considered plat subdivision regulations. There was a brief conversation earlier of switching the order. And we did resolve that when we talked about the agenda. Are we comfortable moving forward with the agenda as approved? That's, I guess, where I would be. Mr. Ayers, were you the one who was thinking we might reorder?
Yeah, I would defer to Mr. Platt on his wishes. I just thought.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Mr. Platt, what's your pleasure?
I'm ready to proceed.
With the agenda as approved, or
That was a duplex proposal. I'm ready to proceed if I am called upon. That's what I'm saying.
well, I guess I would like to at least touch base on this while we're here. Subdivision regulations. Remind ourselves where we are. So, with the indulgence of the commission, let's do that, but maybe not try to run it completely ground in deference to Mr. Platt's months of delays. So, Mr. Harris, can you remind us where we left this? I have a page marker in my notebook on 513. Okay. Where I think we left it is we were proceeding through page by page comments, of which I had about 3 more to get to the end. You guys had been absorbing the comments from previous meetings. Just as a thought to my colleagues, I had Mr. Gurge provide me a a clean copy of and accept all changes, word parlance, and found it extremely helpful. Maybe my mind just isn't up to the task of just sorting through all the red lines and strikeouts, but I assure you that once you see it in that form, the organizational clarity and the opportunities to conform it closely to state statute that Mr. Ayers has worked on will be quite clear to you, and it certainly commends your work, Mr. Ayers. But I just felt much more comfortable about the whole thing once I saw it laid out without all the sense and strikeouts and so forth. So procedurally, we will bring that forward to something that we're comfortable with. And then I also wanted to remind myself, we don't have to wait until we have something that we are recommending for approval to go out to public comment. So if at any point we feel it is appropriate to solicit public comment to help us produce a better set of regulations, we're certainly welcome to do that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
to a certain extent, if there were to be changes after our 30-day public comment period, which really just were not contemplated by the draft which was published, that would be a substantial change requiring a go through again.
yeah, and I guess what I'm picturing is something kind of looking at that same opinion from the other side, saying we aren't sure we've found all of the warts and blemishes, and we would like help from the public.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if they do come forward, then we are free to go another iteration and another, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we do have that. It doesn't have to be perfect for us to solicit public comments and some of these things. I guess my feeling was that we've exposed the regulations to the county engineer, but as one who writes reports in response to regulations, I look forward to the opportunity to hear what the consulting community has to say about our changes at the appropriate time. Okay, so am I understanding where we left it correctly? And whether we want to go through that all right now, I guess we're talking about deferring to Mr. Platt, but is there something specific that you, Mr. Ayers, you, Mr. Gersh, want to bring to our attention on this topic tonight?
Yes, I mean, please do. We got a number of answers to some of the commission's questions. Particularly, there was a lot of discussion at the last meeting about the FEMA mapping or the 100-year floodplain delineation. David and I have emailed back and forth with Jay Schneider and Mr. Gersh. Could you explain Mr. Schneider's thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm still, I don't know, not totally sold on the idea, honestly. So his thoughts are is there's going to be areas outside of the FEMA flood mapping area that may need to be looked at and have a 100-year floodplain designation or something so that they know what a 100-year flood would look like, so that we could put a drainage easement in that area and protect that from people putting buildings in it that may lose their structures and those types of things. Because there are areas in the county such as, Medicine Bow National Forest, that there is no floodplain data. It's not part of the mapping, those types of things. Now, the thing that I'm still not quite understanding from Mr. Snyder's is what is he tried to, I think he basically said the drainage study and the floodplain is similar. So to me, like where we have it, like you need to delineate the 100-year floodplain, or you have to create this floodplain delineation through hydrology stuff or whatever. I almost think that should be put into our drainage plan instead, and use that as the place to delineate anything that we need to delineate. For one of the reasons is either that the wording needs to be changed, because it's like, at what point do we need to have someone do a floodplain analysis on their property? Do we require everyone to do the analysis on their property? Our regulations aren't clear on that. I mean, or what was provided is not clear on that, at least in my mind. So I still have questions. I think I understand what he wants. I think he wants to just have the opportunity to show on the map that there's, flooding could occur in this area, and we should note that. We should put an easement on it, and we should make sure people stay out of it, with their buildings and those types of things. So that's what I think his intention is, and I totally agree with that. I just don't know if right now we have it in there the way we want it. But I don't know what your thoughts are, Matt.
I think you certainly tracked that conversation better than I did. But
honestly, I think
it
we
makes
should
sense
sit down with
that if he does, if this were something that we wanted included in the drainage study, then you'd want that on the face of the preliminary plan.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I suppose that's really a decision for the commission on whether that is something that wants to be pursued or not. Just kidding.
I hate to throw another wrench in that, but I would also have some concern about how we word that such that it doesn't disqualify someone from insurance coverage if, for example, they should have had flood insurance, which the FEMA map clearly delineates where you have to have flood insurance, otherwise you won't be insurable. And I think I would urge caution in how we word this so that we don't place people in an untenable position later on. That's my main concern with how we word this, and that's why I'm kind of nervous about the 100-year floodplain language. The drainage, incorporating it into the drainage study and maybe not being as explicit, or phrasing it another way may be the way that would make more sense.
I mean, yeah. I think there should be a separation there. I think is what we need to do is me and Matt should sit down with Jake Snyder and kind of go over things, and then we should bring him to the meeting, and then we can figure it all out together just to make sure everybody's on the same page and up to snuff on what we need to do with this, and get those types of questions answered by someone that's smarter than myself, probably not Matt, but
for engineering, absolutely smart.
I guess I'd like to see, look into Commissioner Kennedy's point of, we don't want to get into the flood insurance business in the sense of deciding who qualifies for what, where. Yeah, leave that to FEMA. All right, other topics.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
just to, if it's okay to chime in on this 100-year floodplain concept, is there a middle ground on this? Like, could you just do some kind of setback from the 10-year floodplain? Just make some automatic distance that you hope encapsulates the 100-year floodplain without having to call it a 100-year floodplain, or spend the money on doing your own floodplain analysis? That's a question for Jake, I guess. I just wonder if there's another way to treat this. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, please.
So in our drainage analysis, I believe that we look at like a 10-year storm event or a 100-year storm event, which I'm not sure if that's totally different than the floodplain. So I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I think it already is kind of different in the drainage, and the verbiage is different. It's just, I guess I'm not wrapping my head around, we've got 100-year floodplain and then we've got this drainage stuff that's using similar but not the same terminology. So I probably just like created more questions, but
Good regulations answer those questions. Let's get sort that out for us. And then if you guys can come back with some discrete maybe options for us to look at, but I certainly can't contribute any expertise to floodplain map. The state climatologist that I deal a lot with some other regards looked at that horrendous storm we had earlier last month. The suggestion is that may have been what we could call a 1,000-year event, just by way of perspective. But the idea of 100 and 1,000-year events is become increasingly squishy as storm patterns change. So,
well, yeah, Mr. Chair, just to add, we use the term 100-year floods or 100-year event. I was once told by our other county engineer that it's really a 1% chance is your 100-year flood event. You have a 1% chance that this will happen. Not that it's going to happen every 100 years, but there's a 1% chance on any given whatever that it'll happen. But we use this year terminology, which is
the solstices come around on a regular basis, but the floods do not.
right. Because if that was the case, we've had a lot of 100-year events probably in the last decade,
Yeah.
Maybe not in this actual area, but some places.
Okay, to be continued.
Okay. We also reached out to YDOT, kind of concerning a trigger for when a traffic impact study may be required. Let me see if. Do you have that email if I already do? By chance?
This one was from the court, right?
Yeah.
All right, I have it. Do you want to look at it?
Yeah. So they used basically YDOT uses any new development or access that generates 50 or more peak hour trips requires a traffic impact study from them. I'm not sure how we as a county, particularly in planning, would be able to measure that without YDOT's assistance. So, but I know that we had spoken about having a more specific condition for requiring a traffic impact study. So I suppose it could, we could have, I think, a number of conditions which might be a little more workable for our purposes than traffic hours. I suppose it could be based off of size. It could also just be based off of concerns from neighboring property owners, which I know that we've seen before, particularly for some of the subdivisions off of 130 or 230.
I mean, I can add a little bit to this. I guess depending on what we want to do. So the way this is triggered, I believe, by YDOT is if somebody comes in for an access permit, that's what triggers them to say, okay, let's do this calculation and figure how many peak trip hours we're going to see. And then they go ahead and say, okay, it's 50 or more, so now we require this. For us, I mean, we could do something similar. I have a trip generator book that's like that thick in my office, and each different use has a peak hour trip it shows you how many. So I mean, I think it's something that with the help of our county engineer, we could determine, like, okay, this is how many, and we want to have a traffic impact study or whatever. Or, I mean, maybe what would be more feasible for us is to determine, I mean, if we want to do a traffic impact study, let's look at the number of lots. I mean, because I think you can kind of figure out, especially if the residential lots, which is what we usually see in our subdivisions, we can look at, it's like, oh, well, there's 30 lots here. That's going to be, just kind of figure that out and say, well, 30 lots or more, we're going to require a traffic impact study, or, whatever the number is. But I think we could come up with a number of lots pretty easily with the help of like Jake and that giant book I have, and figure out, what makes sense to do a traffic impact study.
The question is, would that only be in effect if it was a county maintained road, or would this also apply to road maintained by subdivision, HOA, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think for the county road is what we're gonna really worry about. If it's not a county maintained road, then why do we, I guess we kind of care, but I don't know if it's in our purview to.
I think it absolutely could be. I mean, really, the purpose for this is safety, and the welfare. It's not just the road condition. That I think that would be the particular trigger, especially, when looking at something like the paddocks, which just, keeps coming up and up again, where there's, rightful concern from their homeowners about having a single point of access. What, as further development occurs within that subdivision.
This goes back to some previous conversations about demonstration you have adequate road access. There certainly is a thread in this conversation that is, regardless of who's maintaining the road, if you're going to develop a subdivision, you have to demonstrate to the county's satisfaction that people can get in and out of that subdivision safely, and not that they have to drive across 40 acres of plowed field. So yeah, I think it's relevant. I certainly like the idea of some kind of numerical standard rather than having it driven by public comment. In our zoning regs, you'll recall we stripped it of an odd phrase that said you had to address all public comments about financial impacts, and it simply invited the public to slow down a project that they didn't like by continuing to bring objections forward. And we do have in the subdivision regs, as they've been proposed already, special circumstances that somebody can come forward and say this is different. We do have that flexibility, but the core I would think would be best tied to something so a person knows what they're up against. If you're adding 20 houses on a road that's never had more than 2, that might be the kind of thing. But would be a threshold. So I would encourage you to work with Jake to try to find a way to put some sideboards on when a traffic study is required and not.
I think Mara's up next.
Okay, Ms. Hanny, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess my own thoughts that I was having about what could trigger a traffic study. Well, first of all, so is it true that we can be more stringent than the state? That if the state says no traffic study is needed, you don't get our peak hour threshold, can the county be more stringent?
Yeah.
Okay. Then so I would be a proponent of the squishy public interest, public comment concept, and looking at actual traffic fatalities or traffic incidences. I think the highway department keeps a database that's easily accessible. If the community, I'm thinking of Harley Acres, there was I thought, significant public interest on this issue of access. It came up from, I think, 3 or more people. From my past regulatory experience, we had to go to public hearing based on significant public interest. And we did a back of the envelope decision that if 3 or more people were interested, we had to go to public hearing. And I'm not saying that should be the threshold for a traffic study, but I think that we did hear significant interest from the community at Harley Acres. It would have been, I think, appropriate to respond to those concerns, and that it was paired with actual traffic history, accident data. And it would have been nice to be able to maybe say, hey, maybe this is a place to do a traffic study. So I agree that we should have some hard and fast, but maybe leave some discretion for that gut feeling you have when you hear community person after community person say they're aware of a problem. When you drive a road all the time, you know how many close calls you've had because of the increased traffic on that road. And like case in point, Roger Canyon Road has only one ingress and egress. And as the subdivisions keep growing out that way, it used to be no one would pass each other on Roger Canyon Road. We all thought of each other as neighbors, and that rule does not hold anymore. The traffic pattern has increased greatly, and there's only one way in and out. So I think these things are important, and they're not going to come up sometimes with an individual subdivision on its own triggering a problem, but cumulatively with all the other ones that have come into a place, maybe you have a burgeoning problem on your hands. So I agree we got to come up with some clear triggers, but I'm also sort of a proponent of the squishy trigger at somebody's discretion. Thanks.
Thank you. Other thoughts, directions, requests on that topic for these gentlemen?
This may also be something that we will need to come back to, because YDOT is, and I can't recall all the details, but they're actually working with all the county road and bridges to do the same kind of inventory on gravel roads that they now have for pavement, where they actually have a database as far as maintenance and traffic loads to know what sort of standards should apply to that road. So those may change in the fairly near future.
And these are roads over which they have no jurisdiction at all. They've just
Well,
extended.
but they also function as overseers, for lack of a better way to put it, for counties and cities on almost all street, highway, road construction, to one extent or another. So
Okay, got that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that we could certainly, well, and I guess, would the commission want to see a mandatory trigger or a permissive trigger? If we were to implement like a peak traffic hour, I do like where Ms. Hanning was going. I think that the language would probably be when it is determined that a study is required to address concerns for public safety, as opposed to making it about actually, members of the public commenting. But I think we could have both in play. And I guess that would be the question, is permissive or mandatory.
my position would be that it should be clear to a developer when it's yes, no, and when this could happen and you may have to do this. it has to be clear, not just, well, in case we get, and part of the issue that Mara had talked about was that was access to a state highway that they were speaking to where YDOT does have the jurisdiction and determined that they didn't need to do a study because of the volume. And the other part of that, and I almost wonder if we need to reference whatever guideline this is with this book that you referenced, because it's not always that we're going to be dealing with the residential development. Think of North 3rd 287 or
The lean quarry.
yeah, where it's going to be a completely different use. And so I don't think we should necessarily just tailor this to residential either.
Okay, good feedback. And am I correct in the draft before us, which I think it's in the previous reg as well, there is ultimately an escape clause that allows the county to request additional information based on special circumstances. That's kind of runs throughout this. So there's always that. At the same time, as I've said, I'm sympathetic to as Commissioner Kennedy articulated that a developer ought to know what they're getting into, some kind of stuff. Okay. So is there another?
Yeah, lastly, after doing some more digging through other counties' regulations, I wanted to pass out how Lincoln County has their septic and wastewater and water requirements for subdivisions laid out.
Do you want me to pull that up?
Yeah, so Commissioner Hannon can see it. So this is novel for Wyoming. This is really the only thing I could see. Most other counties use more of a incentive-based system where they will say, for this size of subdivision, if you have centralized, your density can get a lot higher and lot sizes can get smaller, which we do actually have as part of our rural residential subdivision. If you use a centralized zoning district, not rural residential, our urban residential zoning district. If you are to use a centralized water or sewer system, your lot sizes can be smaller than what would be otherwise permissible, and therefore your density could also increase. But I was unable to find out if Lincoln County does have a 185306C delegation agreement for review of the safety and adequacy of wastewater and water systems, but this is, I think, one avenue that the county could pursue for tighter regulation of.
Sorry, where's this at?
Oh, it is page 7. Yeah, right there. Hopefully you can see that. All right.
Yeah, okay, she's giving us a thumbs up.
Okay. So that was just something that I wanted to bring to the
So
board.
the concept here is that as a characteristic of the zoning district, one would require enhanced versus conventional septics.
Mhm.
And now I can say from my own professional experience, doing a lot of subdivision work in Lincoln County, that this has become accepted practice. At least the engineers I work with don't represent it as great gnashing of teeth and grinding of gears when someone comes in with a mixed use subdivision, it is understood that they will put in enhanced septics, and Mr. Gersh and I have discussed what's called enhanced. The DEQ is not terribly consistent on the point, but yeah, my impression of working with the engineers in Lincoln County is that this system works.
As to any legal challenges to it, I have no idea either. I have reached out to their planning director, and hopefully he will be able to provide some information in the future.
So where we currently stand on it is we, Albany County, require enhanced septic systems for any new and replacement systems in the APOC. That's the only place we address it.
Well, I guess as it currently stands, it would be advanced treatment.
Yeah, and then we have this very squishy issue of what's additional, what's enhanced, what's advanced. And yeah, that's another story, but something upgraded from what would be considered conventional. And we're hopeful that some clarity will come out of the CAP update in that regard. We've asked the consultants to help us out there.
And also, we are, David reached out to his colleagues throughout the state, and sort of the impression I got from Park County is that they pretty much know, just based off of the geology of the areas throughout the county, what's going to need enhanced and what isn't. And they do that more through their permitting authority. Another option is we could also create overlay zones and then refer to that in the subdivision resolution, that certain overlay zones would require enhanced for new subdivisions.
Overlay zones that would not map onto zoning districts because they would be based on, say, soil characteristics or something, something that transcends those other boundaries would be the point of using an overlay. Okay.
Or even just, I mean, certain parts of the county, maybe where development is a little tighter, like south of town, but still outside of, south of Laramie sewer and water district.
Right. I guess another option would be just to make it a condition of a zoning district. Urban residential, small lot residential requires it, but you're suggesting a more nuanced approach where it would be cognizant of some other underlying factors that justify an overlay.
That would just be another approach that could be taken. There's also, I saw from Natrona County, they have triggering requirements if you're within a certain distance from any sort of centralized sewage system or district, sewer water district, that will require any new development to automatically hook up to that district. So there's, bringing the commission a few ideas.
So in the subdivision regulations, as we've been working them, they don't address this issue, if I'm remembering right. Is that correct? Okay, so this is a possible addition to what we've been working on.
Yeah, and I mean, and in line with all of the conversations that we've been having over the year.
Yeah. Well, I'm hopeful that we can get some expert advice coming out of the CAP update that we can use as a step stool into this. Are you thinking that you would delay promulgation of the new subdivision regulations to resolve this? It strikes me as an authority issue. Recall that what started us down the path of revising the subdivision regulations were two things: your observations, Mr. Ayers, that we were not in full compliance with state statute, and a request from county commissioners that we separate preliminary and final plats. So,
and to a certain extent, I would like to get that through, just so we're matching up with state statute.
I know I'm sympathetic to that. Comments from the rest of you?
I'm sympathetic to that too.
And I think that kind of the drainage study is something that we could get hammered out somewhat quickly. I'll be done with the Supreme Court after next Tuesday, so.
You hope.
Well,
That's exciting. That's
At least
your
for real.
first one, right?
yeah, oral argument. Been licensed for 12 months. So,
Well, it makes it pretty easy to get there since there's not a.
and there's a live audio broadcast. So
I want to watch it.
Okay, thoughts, comments, direction, requests? Good stuff, but it sounds like the consensus of the commission is to proceed with the core we started with.
okay.
But yeah, the more you can sort this out, and my impression is we'll be doing all the other counties a favor if we can help get DEQ to land on all this septic stuff. Mr. Gergen.
So I just wanted to bring up another concept to think about, and we don't have to do it with this. However, it's something that we have drafted in my office, and I think Matt's seen it. We had a different process that we created for just splitting a lot into two, which was a little bit more, I think, a quicker, a less onerous process. That it would be super helpful if we had, if you look at our applications, what do we usually see in this? We see a lot split, two lots. I would suggest at some point, and maybe not with this, that we look at a different process for the two lots. We've worked on something, we have something ready to look at, but I just don't know if it's appropriate to look at it this time. That would make it quite a bit easier. I mean, there would still be criteria and what we'd have to do. Like if it's smaller lots, you'd probably have more, looking at water stuff. If they're larger, then it's a little bit easier. If there's already a road there, they're not building a new road, it's even easier, I don't know if you guys would be interested in looking at something like this as part of this or something in the future. I just, administratively, we like to make these things easier on people and on staff. But at the same time, make sure we have quality subdivisions and things, that we're still looking at the things we want to. But if there are certain things that they already have, like a road, and they're not creating a new road, maybe it's something we can work with on timelines and those types of things. So I'm just pitching that. I mean, we don't even have to, you guys didn't have to respond today, but just think about it. If you are interested in something like that, I'd be happy to bring something forward, and we can do it, differently than maybe wait till this is done and then come back with that. With some.
What I would think would be, let us know where you would fit that in here so that we don't have to go through the rest of the document to do that. And my thought is, essentially, you want to mimic with the sideboards the family exemption, because that's basically what it is a split off of a existing parcel that county has no control over. That's really.
And I will say that in looking at other counties, most of them do have just so they'll call it like a simple subdivision or just a split application. So it's around.
But in line with what Matt was saying about getting it in line with state statutes, I think that's probably something we should put off a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm totally okay with that, but I did want to get that idea in front of you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I find that idea very interesting. Before coming to the commission here, if you told me about subdivisions, I'm thinking neighborhoods. it never occurred to me to think of splitting a single lot in half. And in fact, I mean, I totally agree with what you said. Administratively, if you have certain things in place that make it a fairly simple decision, why we couldn't delegate that decision to you? I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and I'm not sure we can totally do that
Well,
because
not
of the way
totally, but-
statutes are written, but.
But I mean, if you're talking about simplifying your work, your process.
And that's what the city does.
Anyway,
It is administrative.
I think it's
the
not-
planning director just signs the plat and they go file it, but I don't think statutorily we can do that because I think the Board of County Commissioners ultimately has
Has
to
to
make that
issue
decision.
the permit, so.
Well,
Yeah.
I
Probably that's the same thing when you issue a permit for a house, right? I mean, they still got to approve it, right?
No.
Or is that not right? Aha.
That's yeah.
Well, nevertheless, I
that's
still
totally
think it's an
administrative.
idea that it's worth
Yeah.
discussion.
All right, let's put it on the list. Just if you're looking for just quick reaction, I first of all agree that let's not burden what we're doing right now. And I
Sure.
like where we started, particularly that let's come into compliance with state statute as quickly as we can. We have large lot subdivisions, we have regular subdivisions, we have small lot subdivisions. So I have some reluctance to chop that ever finer. And then, of course, we always need to keep our eye on the ball that we don't end up providing a pathway to do something piecemeal that we don't allow wholesale.
There's usually always significant like time restraints on that. Maybe each, a parent parcel gets one split per decade, something like that.
Yeah, the family exemption, I think it's one every 5 years. And it changed recently too, maybe 10 years.
But it's pretty tightly circumscribed in who counts as family and how long it has to be. All right, so that's the kind of feedback you're looking for there.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't have the time to do it anyway, so I just. I should have just kept my mouth shut, but you know.
Moving to that far distant field, when we've got lots of time, sure. Okay.
So I guess I'm on the correct path as far as directive from this commission. David and I will work with Jake, tighten up the drainage report requirements. And we will get some proposed language together for traffic impact study criteria. And then after that, I think there's still a couple or provisions that I've included, and we can decide which one that is.
Right,
It should be.
getting close. One of my comments, I won't go through them with you now, but keep by what Skirch said. I'd like to see a definition of a parent parcel. Just that keyed in my mind that was one of my little list of,
Okay.
add that to the definition. So there will be some additional massaging like that. And many of those probably wouldn't count as substantive changes if we wanted to make some corrections during a 30-day review period. But if I'm understanding the sense of the body, yeah, we'll come back to this and continue to chip away at it. But the things you were looking for direction on, you've got somewhere to go.
Yeah, I think we might be able to put some out.
Are we going to work this tonight yet, or?
No, I was thinking, Ron,
Okay, that's fine.
is that consistent with what we all thought we were doing? Okay. And in fact, that last point about plot splits is a nice segue into Mr. Platt's ideas. So, yeah, if everyone, like we're going to form a motion here, but if I've got your consensus correctly, we'll have this back on our next agenda, and perhaps at that point have something that we can put out for review. Sound right?
Thank you for your wherewithal with me.
No, thank you. And maybe just let's go ahead and distribute that piece that you sent me, Mr. Gerch. I thought it was very helpful just to see it clean.
Okay, yeah,
It really did highlight the progress we've made.
once we make the changes, I'll send you both.
Okay.
So you have both, so, yeah.
Okay, item 8, planning and subdivision regulations amendments. And the specific amendments we're looking at are duplexes. So Commissioner Platt, you've been carrying the torch on this. Why don't you remind us where we are and introduce us to your proposals?
Very good. Actually, when I went through the agenda, when David first spelled out, Let's see where duplex you mentioned. I didn't see it. I thought, okay, maybe it's been shelved.
He didn't call it duplexes.
No, I understand.
He hit it.
I later called off, so what's going on? That's fine. This already feels like ancient history to me, so I don't know what it feels like to y'all, maybe even not even history. But as background, this came about from the ground Paul application received back in June for a duplex. And when I went through and looked at that, I thought this seems really strange that we have to rezone from a residential district to a commercial district to permit construction of a duplex, which seems pretty ordinary. So I went around and looked at some other zoning regulations in other counties and found out that in fact most counties have allow duplexes by right in many districts. And in the end, I settled on language that I liked and understood from our sister neighbor county next door, Laramie County, and came up with a proposal. Essentially boils down to where SFR, single family residences, are currently allowed in our zoning districts. We would also allow duplexes. And it gets a little bit beyond that, but that's what it boils down to. So I thought that the first thing I would do with that little bit of background was get a sense from my other fellow commissioners here, whether you want to proceed, if you truly think this is a good idea and worth pursuing or not. Because obviously if the consensus is not, we shouldn't spend any time. So I'd like to go around and Laura.
Yeah, let's first, just by way of background, I had a few additional thoughts that came out of that brown pod discussion. So
All right.
if we could kind of throw those
That's
in at this
fine.
point, and I totally appreciate your idea. Let's not wander off in some direction we didn't want to go. In response to that brown pod zoning change, my sense is we all have the same feeling of what a kludgy process to go make it commercial when all they want to do is add a duplex. Some of the options that we discussed at that point were adding duplexes to specific zoning districts as opposed to all of them. And perhaps even breaking out some new zoning districts. And I think Commissioner Kennedy mentioned planned unit developments. Those are some other ways to do that. We talked about making duplexes a conditional use, possibly within certain zoning districts. We discussed just adding duplexes to some of the higher density zoning districts. And there's also discussion of how this might interface with the growth area management plan that's ongoing. So with all of that sort of in our minds, are there other thoughts on kind of where we are? And then let us pose to ourselves Mr. Platt's question about, do we want to take this up? Are there other kind of plenary thoughts of how we got here, what the universe of possibilities looks like? All right, hearing none, let's do your round robin.
Mara, you want to proceed with this in general or?
Well, so I have some conflicting feelings on it. First, I wanted to say thank you for your effort in trying to sort it out, and also for extreme patience for waiting for it to come up and have time spent on it during our agendas. So I wanted to thank you for that. Yeah, I agree. The item that initiated this discussion seemed like it was an odd fix to the problem, which got us thinking about how to solve it. And I was more of a proponent maybe of limiting this to like the growth area around the city, where an increased density makes sense with the growth of the city and the potential for hooking people onto city utilities, perhaps eventually. But you know what I really struggle with in allowing it everywhere is just the fact that we also allow a lot of incidental agriculture on all these same residential zone types. And I can only define how many animal units a person could have on their land by whether they're not a feedlot. I don't know, David, maybe you can help me, but I don't find a specific number of animals that are allowed. I just see where if you have this many animals over this period of time, you're considered a feedlot. And so therefore I would consider anything under that amount to be okay as an incidental agriculture. So I'm just trying to imagine a duplex out in some of the subdivision areas, and now we have double the livestock and double the dogs and double the cars, and whether that's really appropriate to plunk that all over the county to address housing issues, or whether that kind of housing should see a commensurate decrease in agricultural uses that are okay to balance out the increased human use of a property. These are the things that I sort of just wonder about, how to blend in. But in general, I like the idea of trying to create another housing option that is more affordable to build and to buy. But I'd prefer to see that type of housing near our urban areas and not sprinkled all over the county. Thanks.
Ern? Well, as you and I have discussed, Mr. Platt, I'm generally unsympathetic in that it seems to me that the heart and soul of zoning is impact. I mean, that's what it's all about. That's why we have 35-acre minimum lot sizes, 10-acre minimums, 5s, 2s, is a surrogate for general impacts. And those, if we increase population density by whatever means, we increase impacts. Echoing what Commissioner Hanning is saying, more traffic, more dust, more noise, more dogs, more everything. And the fact that we would share a wall, to me, is a distinction without really much difference in terms of how many folks are present on a particular tract. So if our zoning is wrapped around one residence per 10 acres, 5, 2, depending what zone you're in, and that is, we don't regulate family size. I mean, obviously that's, as I say, it's a surrogate for a degree of impact, which multifamily dwellings compromise those basic decisions. So if we were going to move into allowing higher densities, I would like to see it approached in that spirit, which I think is what it is. And that would mean, do we want higher densities in certain zoning districts? I certainly would go along with it in our higher densities, as Commissioner Hanning suggested. So those urban residential, yeah, absolutely. And I don't know that I would limit it to duplex as opposed to triplexes, quads, multifamily housing. So fundamentally, I don't see a particularly compelling distinction between duplexes and other ways to increase residential density. And then I also think the discussion will be significantly informed by how the growth area management plan comes together. I think over the ensuing months, we're all going to learn a whole lot about zoning options, which we may or may not want to pursue, that will look very much at these kinds of things, and affordable housing is a component of that. So that's kind of where I am on the general topic. Yes, Mr. Kennedy.
To an extent, I would go along with what Vern said. You and David actually had a pretty good discussion about allowed or conditional in certain zones. And I think that would fix the problem that came up earlier this year, that where it seemed a very convoluted process to do that. I don't see at present much demand for anything beyond duplex in anything where the county has jurisdiction. But also, I think of some of the private in-holdings and areas near the forest where they tend to be vacation homes or areas where a family might be, extended family might be very interested in some sort of a duplex arrangement. And I actually think your idea, either one of these would work very well. I think and I actually think it's a fairly quick fix. And the detail that needs the most attention is where it is permitted by right and where it is conditional. And I think that solves the problems that Mara and Vern had mentioned earlier too, where, you know, when we get below a certain size, it should be conditional. But on the other hand, if I have 160 acres that's right adjacent to the forest and by all rights, I could put a large single family there, I don't see that there's really any difference if I put a duplex there of some type. It may even be a single structure with a breezeway in between. That just, it doesn't necessarily have to have a common wall either.
Well, that's not strong support, certainly. I think I'd like to offer a few comments. Responsible by both Nora and Vern said, Sandy, our chairman. And then turn back over to our chairman for how would you proceed? I guess my first comment is about density. If you think about the next 1,000 homes, they're going to come to the county. They're going to come to the county. Overall density of the county is going to increase. The question is, how is it going to increase? Where is it going to increase? So this isn't going to change the fact that people will continue moving into the county, wanting to live somewhere. This is just another option, and is generally an affordable option. I mean, you could have upscale duplexes like you could have upscale anywhere. That's not likely to happen in a place like Albany County. So generally, it probably would be more affordable type. If, according to David, I think you told me that last year there were about 80 single-family residences that were approved. That includes trailers and cabins. And if you want to be very conservative about what kind of impact we could be talking about here from duplexes, very conservative, just suppose 20% of those going forward, for whatever reason, were going to be built as duplexes instead of single-family residences, currently the case. We'd be talking about 8 duplex buildings, 16 dwelling units, and 2 per building. That'd be 8 duplexes per year. To me, that's not a big impact in a county the size of Albany County. If it were, by some means, to be perceived justly or unjustly as a big impact and negative, obviously any decision we took to permit this could be revisited and changed. In fact, I think past history is that maybe this is the first duplex application that's come on a long time, around all application. So in reality, the likely impact going forward, I mean, if you just had used past history, and I don't know what else we could use to examine what sort of impact this could have, I think it's very negligible. I don't think developers are going to rush in to build a bunch of duplexes, but it could happen. If it did happen, my own view is that if we could encourage folks to build duplexes and be happy in a duplex on a 1-acre lot versus single-family residences on 10-acre lots going out from here to infinity from town, that would be a plus, mostly. It it was something a plus for the community in terms of planning schools, planning roads, planning sewer, planning water, you name it. It might not be a plus to the person's eyes who wants to live on a large piece of rural agricultural land. Finally, just as a sort of segue to the state, if you look south of the interstate, south of Laramie, right now today, there's 3 large parcels of land zoned agricultural. And
Where are you?
this is immediately south of the interstate.
So, but you mean to be south of town? So-
South of town, yeah. So it's in the county. And just see what the parcels total 418 acres. They're largely owned by either 2 entities or 2 families or possibly 3, just say 3. Right now, as they're configured and with ownership, you could put up to, I think 11 houses on it, as it's currently zoned, 1 house per 35 acres. You'd have to check my figures, but this is what I saw. There's nothing to prevent those folks from coming forward to the county and asking for that land to be rezoned to urban residential, and theoretically, with allowing some amount of land for roads and infrastructure and whatnot, you could put as many as 1,500 houses on there. That zoning changed over to urban residential. That's a big change in different density, which right now is perfectly permitted and allowable. And so when I set that aside to allow duplexes where we currently allow houses, I don't see it as being a big deal in terms of practical effects. With that said, Mr. Chairman, I'm perfectly willing to see this tabled or just set aside and not take it up and not go any further than this. But if we did proceed, again, at least the problem situation would come again. It might maybe in some conceivable circumstance spur some development interest in duplexes near town. To tomorrow's point, I don't think it's likely people will be able to build a whole lot of duplexes far away from Laramie. I mean, it could happen if we permitted it, but it seems to me it's very unlikely. When you look at where development is happening right now in the county, it's happening within a certain amount of distance of Laramie. And that's where it's likely to continue, in my opinion. I could be totally wrong. So with that, Mr. Chairman,
Okay,
I'll turn the discussion back over to you.
Thank you. And I guess in those comments, though, and trying to extract a consensus from what I'm hearing, and certainly anybody is completely welcome to make a motion at any time if they want to bring this to a specific point. But I'm hearing general agreement that we were unhappy with the brown paw situation. So let's correct that. We all agree on that, I think. And again, if anybody has objection, say it now. So perhaps a response to your suggestion would be, let's march down that road until our consensus begins to tatter a bit. And as you just put it, Commissioner Platt, yeah, a bunch of duplexes on 1 acre lots would be better than a bunch of 10 acre lots. But what you're describing is allowing duplexes on those small lots. If we anticipate that that's going to happen closest to town, and we think that's commensurate with our mission to look after the health, welfare, moral fiber of the county, then let's apply it to the areas close to town. I mean, all of those seem to go in a very similar direction from what I'm hearing from our little round robin here. And very little of the objective is served by extending that idea of increasing the density to 5 acre, 10 acre, large lot subdivisions. Does that make sense? That we might usefully trim the proposal to the higher density areas?
Oh, I absolutely think that makes sense. I think we could also stipulate this within a certain distance of city boundaries. That might alleviate Commissioner Manning's concerns.
And that speaks directly to the growth area management plan, which I'm not here as a champion of. I'm definitely watching that parade go by and wondering where it's headed. But it is proceeding, and it looks very specifically at what's happening within a mile of the city and affordable housing. I guess I've been a little skeptical over the 2 years I've been on the commission when someone brings forward a subdivision, a 5 acre subdivision, and says, "Oh, this addresses the housing shortage." Well, everybody uses housing shortage to serve their own ideas. To my mind, the shortage is on the low end, the inexpensive end, the people that are just getting started and trying to buy a house. And that's multifamily houses and apartment buildings. And I think there's room for infilling in town, and let's have these higher densities, this urban residential things that we use. That to me addresses the housing crunch as I perceive it.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just say, this was not really meant to address housing shortage. I'm just saying that is one additional characterization you take a look at. I think duplexes are perfectly fine, whether or not they're affordable or not.
Well, people can afford things that I can't, that's for sure. And there's a demand for those properties. Right, Mr. Gertsch, how might we proceed to, as I say, move into the common ground and then find that edge of common ground?
Well, I mean, to me, I think we need to identify what the problem really is, right? So the problem isn't duplexes necessarily. What we're seeing in the county, throughout the county, near the city, is, and what a duplex really is kind of having that opportunity to have a second dwelling on a property. That's what we get calls about it all the time, and it's usually a lot of them are out in like Wild Horse Ranch or whatever. Well, we got this 40 acres. Why can't I put this second house on it? You know, and it's like, well, we say you can't. That's basically why, you know. So to me, that's the root problem of what we're looking at. The whole duplex thing, I think, was kind of an anomaly, you know. But at the same time, I don't think it's inappropriate in an area like where the Bear Paw one was, because there's water out there, right? So anywhere there's some kind of services, I mean, I think it makes it a little more palatable to put some of these things. Now going forward, how do we address it? I think we see what's going to come out of the growth plan. There are a lot of different zoning options that they're coming up with, which I don't know. I still have some. We're still working through these things, and I've got lots of comments for them. So, but there may be some other options that come out of that that may address what we're looking at. I mean, I honestly don't think we drop the issue. I think we just need to mold it into what we want it to be, and what's appropriate for a county subdivision or county area, and what the standards are to get there. Like, you know, for this duplex thing, it's like, you know, if you were north of town where there's no water and sewer, on a similar sized lot that we looked at for Brown Paw, I'd say that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because one, it's going to be difficult to put a well and a septic on that same property. 1 acre is not very big, and that's what Brown Paw was. It was 1 acre, or it might have been less, wasn't it? I believe it was 1 acre or less. But it where it had water, okay, now we don't have to worry about a distance to the well, you know, and we know that they're going to have potable water. and you know, that lot can fit a septic. And, you know, as long as it's not like a 10 bedroom duplex, you know, there's 5 on each side or whatever. I mean, you can fit that. I mean, that's another thing. It's like, it has to be able to fit the septic system. So while I think it's good to have that option. But how we get there and what the criteria are, I think we need to flush out. And I don't know if we want to do that until we get into this growth plan and see what comes out of that. But
Well, let's take, Groundhog was what got everyone's attention.
sure.
What would you like to have seen be available to you for Groundhog?
Honestly, I wish it was just a conditional use instead of the changing the land use and all of that. It'd have
Conditional
been-
use within, they were small lot residential, right? Okay.
Yeah, and so we would have to change the district too, because we only allow one dwelling in a small residential. We've limited that. So you'd have to change that standard to allow at least 2 dwellings, and then have the 2 dwelling units, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So one dwelling.
Right, 2 dwelling units, yeah. Whatever, you know, family can live in, basically, yeah. We would have to change that. And then, yeah, and I still think a conditional use is appropriate in those areas, just to make sure that they can say, yeah, we can get water, we can fit a septic on it or whatever, you know, whatever we want through the conditional use process. I mean, maybe not necessarily. I mean, maybe if it's a large enough lot, we just say, yeah, it's great. You can do this on, it's small lot residential. You can do this. But if it's, you know, a smaller lot, then it's like, oh, well, now we kick in that conditional use permit. I don't know. I mean, the more that we can just say, this is in the right area, yeah, just get a zoning certificate and go ahead and build it, you know, is better for us than making them jump through all these hoops. And changing things to commercial to put residences on is not good. I don't think that's good, but that's the way we have available.
No, I think we all agreed that's not good.
And maybe it's a new zone. You brought up potential different zoning. I mean, we could bring into a multifamily zone, but then at the same time, I don't want it to go through and like, okay, this 1 acre lot's now multifamily zone. We want that to be a whole area, you know, and not, I don't know. That's where the conditional use seems more palatable. I don't know.
But where do you see the growth area that concept seems to bear on? Those that we've identified priority growth areas. Would that be a way to? We've never codified those in zoning. They're in the comp plan. But the concept was, here are areas that we think are suitable for these activities.
Sure. I mean, I would love to use just the comp plan. I mean, for that reason, put into codify like the priority growth area 2, because that's what we're looking at. South of Laramie Water Sewer District, anything that's a water district, sewer district, or water and sewer district is a priority growth area 2. Codify that and then say, yeah, this is a possibility in that area. I mean, that's doable.
And you do that as a zoning overlay?
Special district.
Well, special districts, what the water district is, it'd probably be an overlay.
I mean, we're just kicking ideas around here.
Like what's the Centennial?
Centennial is a water and sewer district, but it's also priority growth area 2.
Well, but it's the neighborhood, you know, that zone.
Oh,
Is that-
neighborhood conservation district.
Yeah, is that a zone or a
It's
special
it's
district?
well, so that's an overlay zone as well.
Oh, it is an overlay, okay.
That's, I mean, that's the way to deal with it if an area, so you have your base zoning, the way to deal with just a specific area is the overlay zone concept. I mean, that's what we've always used. Trying to think if there was any other planning tools, but that's pretty,
But
that's the most common.
right now we have aquifer protection overlay zone and the,
Neighborhood conservation
which
overlay
I've
zone.
never understood what that even was, but
Basically, it allows people to, like if they, like in Centennial, you got a small lot, and they have a house in that lot or whatever, and or whatever, or in the road or whatever.
All right, different issue.
So so the new zoning says you have to be 10 feet from the property line. Well, you have a house that's 5 feet from the property line, so it's already non-conforming. Say they want to put on a little porch that goes out another 2 feet. The neighborhood conservation overlay zone says we're grandfathering you and you can still go up to their property line, basically. It's a way of grandfathering properties and not requiring a variance to do what they want to do, I guess. It really is, it's a way to get around variances is what it is. I mean, to put it, and the variance is to go through the process and say, okay, we don't want to apply this rule as it's written.
Rather like a blanket variance, it sounds like, where you just said all of the properties within this zone. We will grant
Yes.
this.
Yeah, they don't have the same setback standards, basically. That's the big thing in those. I mean, and also there's all sorts of lots in there that are not, they're all non-conforming lots, but that was the case before, so. Yeah, when they're like.
The only
100
thing that
foot
we've
across.
done really that we could do to fix that was to require any change that comes here, they have to have a full survey.
Yep,
There.
which we did, yeah.
At the meeting where this first came up, Commissioner Kennedy, you got my attention with a general objection to conditional uses for the obvious reason that we ought to know what we're doing. So how do you respond to the idea of using this as a conditional use to address a brown faucet?
I do think that it makes sense with smaller lots where water and sewer isn't available. Because that is the reason for the size that we small lot residential, urban residential. If for example, those services are available, or let's say somebody wants to do a large one and they're going to propose that they create those amenities there, that's large enough that I don't think the conditional part would be an issue. Or we could make, that could be explicitly said in there. If they can obtain water and sewer on urban residential in the county, it's not a conditional use for duplex. But I don't have any problem with that being a permitted use once we get to, I'm not even gonna put a number out for the size, but you and I have talked. Is there any distinction between a single family residence that's 5 or 6 bedrooms and a duplex that is 2 in each unit or 3 in each unit? No, they're beyond that. I mean, that there's no, shouldn't be any expectation that those two things are any different as far as its effect on the land. And we have those general guidelines as far as farm animals. It's not the case with dogs, but the other side of that, essentially now we're requiring, or we're not requiring, but we tend to be very unfavorable toward developments that don't have covenants. So I mean, that's been continually brought up on almost anything over 3 lots that we've looked at over the last year is, what about the covenants? And I think they address a lot of the issues that Mara brought up with duplicative things. And I still think we could essentially do what you want there, and our main issue should be where it's allowed, where it's not permitted, and where it could be conditioned in some way or another.
Mr. Chair, I go to, this is going way late, but I should re-clarify what my thoughts were at the time. I mean, it's coming back a little more. It was Brown Paul that spurred my thinking and my looking out. And the discovery that in fact it's quite common in other counties to rent duplexes where single family residents are allowed as part of the allowed right. And that made sense to me. So it was Brown Paul that spurred this, but this proposal is not purely to correct Brown Paul. It just struck me as a generally good idea to allow duplexes generally in most of our residential districts where they're not currently allowed. To me, as Commissioner Kennedy stated, you're talking about dwellings that are essentially the same, very comparable numbers of people involved in most cases, comparable amounts of bathrooms, comparable impacts. I mean, you can't look at a house going up and saying how many people are going to live there, what's going to be 1 or 10. I mean, it could be whatever. How large that house is, you could have a 10-acre property. It's not going to happen, obviously, but you could have an 8-acre house. We don't restrict that. So again, it seems to me, why not allow duplexes where we allow houses? It was that simple thing. So again, it went beyond just looking at ground ball saying, well, how can we fit ground ball? This is the way to do it. It's just a generally more permissive sort of zoning.
And I come back to Brown Paw is trying to find the, I think we all felt uncomfortable. So that's a bad end. As far as it's just a blanket, duplexes are just a big house. That's where I think we all started to fray a bit. And certainly the impact of a great big house is more than a little house, but the tools that we have to work with are residences. We could zone on bedrooms. I mean, I don't know if anybody ever did that, but that one could make that argument. That would, I think, be very difficult to enforce. I mean, you got a new baby, so then suddenly you're out of your zone. So yeah, as to it's the same as just a big house. True. We have speed limits.
Not the same, equivalent.
Equivalent. Well, what's equivalent? I mean, we like to modulate the speed limits on the highway based on your eyesight or your age or something, but we don't have the ability to make those finer distinctions. So what we do is we zone residences as a surrogate for impact. So that's, I guess, my response to it is different. It is as different as 2 homes versus 1. Go ahead, Mr.
I was just going to add to what Mr. Platt said. He said that a lot of the counties throughout Wyoming allow duplexes. Well, ours was one of them until 2015. Just so you know, we allowed them on property by right. So
What was the impetus for?
Yeah, why did we change?
I don't know. We just changed it.
It's a distant memory now.
Yeah.
That was just
I couldn't
before
remember
I
if
came
you were
on.
doing that.
That was just before I came on.
It was probably my fault, honestly. So, I mean, I just blame it on me. I don't know. And now I'm like, in a lot of ways, I'm backpedaling on some of the things we did. I was like, oh, geez, this is making it such a pain
Well, and I think when you were since you've been on the commission, Commissioner Kennedy, there was a proposal to allow a second dwelling. Am I right? Or was that before?
That was
Before.
before.
All right, you'll remember that.
Mhm.
And that came out of the Planning and Zoning Commission with the approval, and the county commission tabled it indefinitely.
Indefinitely.
That was the end of the discussion. So, no, the idea is by no means radical.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say something about that also. Beyond that, I mean, David has right now still the specific language that went forward to the county commission to allow a second residence, at least some properties. And I've encouraged David to put that to us again, because I mean, I mean, he addressed tonight, the fact they get these requests again and again and again. And that, to me, also sounds like a perfectly simple thing you're doing. You know, the county commissioners better than I do, but I don't know why it would go through. And also, to me, that's a completely separate issue from duplexes. And ought to be considered as such.
Because why?
Duplexes are a specific type of building. And they don't have anything to do with families, you know, wanting to build a grandmother apartment or, you know, an in-law house or that kind of thing. And, you know, I can't justify it on more words, just saying they're different entities and serving different purposes. But I mean, if you have our county staff saying they get these requests again and again and again, people want to do this, and we can't think of any reason why they should be able to do this, I think we all send out to the county commissioners and see what they say.
Okay, well, all right, so to try to bring this to a head. First, a comment on this the issue of covenants. I have not, in my thinking, taken covenants into regard one way or another. But we've agreed that they have nothing to do with our authority. And my experience with covenants is that it's a total crapshoot. They last as long as it takes the developer to sell the lots and clear town. Now, maybe others on the commission have felt comforted by the existence of covenants, but I don't think covenants in any way serve to replace zoning, just as an aside. Now, to bring this conclusion forward, any member of this commission is welcome to bring any motion to the table that they feel is appropriate. So if you, Commissioner Platt, want to have the proposal that was articulated by this commission some years back brought forward, it sounds to me like we're at the point of everyone's got the feel for where we all are. We need something to articulated to move forward. And so you're welcome to make that motion or instruct staff to bring forward a previous motion and let's have something concrete in front of us that we can then discuss. Amend and vote. Does that sound fair?
Yes, that sounds more fair. David, your zoning amendment language for a second residence, you said you would like to have Matt look at that again? Is that right?
Well,
Before you said it, before you bring it to the commission? Or would you like to bring it to the commission now as it is?
I'd actually have to see what it says. It's been a while, so.
Okay.
Well, let's
Mr.
have
Chairman.
staff resurrect that piece.
No,
Yes,
we can.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we direct county planning staff to resurrect that proposal to allow a second dwelling, single family resident properties where they exist right now. And to go over that language again, and if necessary, have Mr. Ayers look at it also and to get ready for us to take a look at.
Second.
The motion is to instruct staff to bring forward the motion for allowing a second dwelling unit. Discussion, Mr. George.
Yeah, I will just note that it's more than just a second dwelling. It's a kind of a rewrite of the zoning districts and how we look at density, lot size, and those types of things. So it's more comprehensive than just that simplified statement. But I can definitely bring it back for review, and I'll let Matt look at it as well.
With that clarification, would you amend that motion to
I would
a specific thing of
you'll allow.
second family, second dwelling?
Yes, I would like to amend that to
Have it.
restrict that to allowing a second family unit.
Okay, is that acceptable? Second. Okay. So the motion before us is to have Mr. Gertz bring for our discussion the proposition, the aspects of the proposition that's allowed a second dwelling as a matter of right on all zoning districts. So the motion is simply to bring this to the next stage. Discussion of that motion. Ms. Hanning, you're looking thoughtful.
No, I'm certainly willing to entertain those reg changes among the many reg changes we are all entertaining right now. It's like sugar plum fairies dancing in our heads, all these reg changes. So yeah, I'm certainly open to looking at that. It seems like it is a bigger problem that planning staff have been dealing with compared to the duplex and just coming up with more housing stock of a lower cost. It doesn't seem like David's getting a lot of knocks on the door over that. So yeah, I know that I was one of the people who had concerns about that reg change previously, but I will look at it with fresh eyes and start all over.
Here. Further discussion? Let's take a vote. Mr. Kennedy,
Aye.
Ms. Hanning,
Aye.
Platt, aye. Stein absent, Hinckley, aye. Done. You understand your commission here?
Yeah, I'll go back through the trash bin and see what I can find. and bring it back.
You sent it to Michael and I.
Did I? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good, I'll look for our email then.
Yeah, I mean, it looked pretty good to me.
I think maybe you could find it in the commissioner minutes from back.
Yeah, no, I know I have it. That's not a joke.
It was Terry Jones who made the motion to table, as I recall, and it was controversial at the time that they did take some testimony on it.
So there's a few things in there, yeah, that they did work, but they didn't want.
One of the concerns was how it interfaced with the APOZ. So those issues will be the same. Okay, next item on the agenda is the bylaws, rules of procedure. Thank you all for a useful discussion. We'll move the idea forward. Mr. Kennedy, this was sort of your baby, not the exclusive view, but would you like to introduce us to the topic and what do you have in mind?
I think the only thing I'm really going to call your attention to is our current planning and zoning rules, which are dated 8th of October, 1975. So by my math, we're working pretty close toward 50 years since these have been looked at. And there may have been a statute change or two since then.
Just the formatting, yeah.
Yeah, this was pre the current statute formatting, and that was actually done in the late 70s. So, although I'm sure an attorney could chase down where all of those lay now, but there are two sets of rules that David has attached the ones from Teton County and
Laramie County, I think we said.
and
City of Laramie, actually.
City of Laramie. And I had also sent David the Carbon County planning and zoning.
Didn't I include those?
I didn't see them in there.
What?
I
think it's just Laramie.
I didn't.
Yeah.
And ours.
Yeah,
Huh. Sorry about that. I thought I included those.
but
Trash can.
yeah. No, it's in all of our emails. And the only thing I had done to that was remove Carbon County's formatting and do some simple language changes. And they actually had done that, revised theirs, I believe, in 2020. And I don't know whether I copied you on that or not.
Okay, I don't believe so.
But to me, the Carbon County rules look the most straightforward. And I guess on Teton County, the one thing that I would add with some of their other intergovernmental agreements that are in place, I think Carbon County is much more similar, although they do have more municipalities to deal with. But I think if we could send that out for review and maybe suggest edits back to David, it looked to me like it could be fairly straightforward, and it doesn't require And none of these, to my knowledge, have required the approval of the commissioners. So we simply would adopt rules after review. And that was my take from what I saw of the other rules.
I thought in ours, it did require.
It did, but that was actually prior to a lot of other state statutes. So I'm kind of assuming that attorneys in those two counties decided that it wasn't necessary, but because Matt needs something else to do. Like,
Right, should be pretty simple. So the suggestion would be to let's start with carbon certificates.
I believe those would be the most straightforward ones. I saw a couple things that I brought up a question in my mind of quite how things might actually happen there, but they look pretty straightforward to me.
And I apologize, I didn't get into the packet. I swear I had them in there. I was like, I put it in my little cover sheet, it's like.
And I've never worked on large PDFs and forgot to put in 4 or 5 pages.
Yeah, right. Well, I missed 532 through 560. All right, and might we ask Mr. Ayers to just give him a quick look for conformity with the state law?
Carbons, that is?
Yeah, carbon.
Okay.
Yeah, let's- so, and I think we all look.
And I would hunt it up and email it to you right now, except I just did all my Windows updates the last 2 days, and it still has an indexed search for everything yet. So,
I'll get them set out.
okay.
So there weren't specific things. I guess my first review of ours was, let's make them say what we actually do.
Yeah.
In that, I think we've been reasonably happy with our procedures. So there wasn't something specific that you thought was, oh my gosh, this is terrible.
No, it's just that when people look at what we have done and ask for our rules and procedures, we don't have any.
So, they're there.
You want to see
we
a
just don't
2022.
Exactly follow.
Were there others reactions to what we had in the packet? Just a kind of a plenary, what were you seeing things that you liked or didn't like? Food for thought as we move forward.
One thing that struck out to me about the Teton regulations is they're certainly more formalized and specific than ours are. Yeah, much more detailed.
And that appealed to you or no, or neutral?
It just struck me. I mean, I assume that we are operating within our allowed scope with our current rules. And we're not doing anything badly wrong. But if we need to update them, then, we can have some good models or templates to follow.
Ms. Hanning, did you have a reaction to what you saw in the packet?
Well, I didn't get a chance to compare word for word to ours. I thought the Teton one sometimes was overly wordy and other times appropriately descriptive. Like talking about soliciting public comment and that it might need to be limited to a certain amount of time. We announced that at the start of our hearings. You'll have to forgive me if I don't notice that's in our bylaws right now. But having statements like that very clear for the public to understand so they don't feel like we're infringing on their ability to participate by, announcing, oh, you only have 3 minutes. Maybe it does state that already, but I thought whatever we can be clear about with the public about how we will interact with them will make it more transparent and take away opportunities to argue about whether we're unnecessarily limiting input. But I didn't get to go detail by detail through. I was just struck by they were they were a little bit long. They were sometimes a little bit snarky, even, I thought. And so there was a little bit of a tone there that I would not care to reproduce. Just wanted to be straightforward.
Yeah, I don't think we're on a word by word comparison at this point, just general impressions. Yeah, I thought those started to read like Robert's Rules of Order, and what can simply refer to Robert's Rules of Order, and I'll to bring all those things in bit by bit by bit. And as far as public comment, obviously controversy in all regards. The city council's grappled this with for years and years and years, and as one who commonly takes advantage of opportunities for public comment, I fully agree that we are not convening and electing and paying our elected bodies to provide group therapy. And those public comment periods are not an opportunity for people simply to come forward and address the multitudes of campaigns. So I'm okay with some restrictions on public comment. The public comment is there to allow us to do a better job, I think. And that's true of city council, legislature, county commission. So
And-
I'm not averse to having some kind of sideboards on public comment.
And there is one thing that I have noticed a lot more at legislature than I have ever seen at any local government, and that is where a chairman will steer someone back to the topic that they are testifying on. And that's where I see things go off the rails, where there's no time limit. More so than where somebody actually has substantive comments that may run longer. And some of that is dependent on the setting too. Have we started a hearing at 2 PM because we know that there are going to be dozens, if not 100 comments that are going to be made, but we do want everybody to have their shot at it. So some of that is to be fair to everyone, not those who happen to be first off the gun.
So Mr. Harris, am I correct? There's no obligation to take public comment statutory. Not that I'm advocating that, but just to get the parameters of the discussion.
Under the Wyoming Public Meetings Act, it's just that it has to be open to the public, yeah.
And that's certainly my understanding. We should do the public's business before the public. But we invite the public to participate in that in order to come up with a more legitimate result, to inform ourselves of the issues that are out there. So I think that from that foundation, that's what suggests to me that it is appropriate to put sideboards on public comment.
Well, except for when public hearings are required, that necessitates public comment.
I would say the same thing.
Yeah, just by I guess the obvious sense of it, but there's statutory guidance on 20 minutes or an hour and a half or 30 seconds or anything. Just because we're calling it a
30
public.
seconds.
I mean, one could characterize a public hearing as a hearing in public.
Well, what would you hear if there was no comment from the public?
Yeah, you would hear your colleagues, and you would hear your staff. Again, I'm not arguing against it. I'm just the caution that sometimes bodies will go overboard in having public comments at the beginning, public comments on every item, public comments at the end, and they're simply inviting their meetings to be hijacked at the public's expense.
So far, we don't look like we're risking the flag.
No far.
I think there's a fine line. It's like, you gotta make sure you're actually allowing people to, talk to you. But I don't think you need to let people, filibuster anything at the same time.
Okay, so as I go through those, and then just I think and if one reads the rules, the Robert's Rules of Order with care, which those are very thoughtful documents, and one will find substantial flexibility extended to small bodies like our own, recognizing that we can proceed on a somewhat less rigid basis as a group of 5 than we could as a group of 50. So I would like our laws to preserve that degree of flexibility. So I'm happy to proceed as we've discussed. Anybody else want to add a comment at this point?
Mr. Chair, the only other ironic thing I noticed in the Teton rules or compared to ours is ours has a limit on how much the commissioners can talk, right? We have a discussion by planning commission, a maximum of 10 minutes to direct questions to staff. And so I guess we have to ask ourselves if we want to continue to limit ourselves on, not that we've been enforcing it, but we have limits on ourselves in our current rules, and maybe that's appropriate, but we're not enforcing them, and I didn't notice that the Teton County one put limits on themselves.
Have to hire a staff member with a stopwatch to come. Okay, cool.
No, I was surprised at those. I would use those. And there was also the option is always available to any member of the commission to what's called call the question, to basically move to conduct debate. And that's standard Robert's rules, takes 2/3 majority non-debatable. So if someone is abusing the opportunity to question staff or to move forward, there is a mechanism for that to be limited. So I would not favor building that into our rules. Okay. So Carbon County,
I'm not sure.
I actually did find the dates. The Carbon County rules are from June 1st of 2020, and the Teton rules were from 2014. So
The Carbon County ones should be in your email mailbox. So they've been sent. If you didn't get them, let me know.
and Mr. Kurtz, you are a player in this. If you would like to see these meetings confined to 20 minutes like speed chess, and you can argue for it.
Okay, I may do that.
We can take it under consideration. All right, other thoughts on bylaws? I think we have a plan to move forward. Once every 50 years, I guess we can tolerate it.
it might be 48 by the time it gets done, but we'll get there.
I mean, the geologist was having to myself, a million years here and there. What the heck? Right, moving along then. There you go. Objections. Growth area management plan update. That one's we've kind of hinted over the course of this meeting is poorly bounded. What can you tell us, Mr. Gerch?
All right, so our next meeting about the growth area plan will be October 25th. That's Tuesday before the meeting on Thursday.
And that's everybody under the sun, or us, or
That will be us, us only. We're okay, I guess, with separating groups. So I think they're okay with the separate process and then coming together at the end and then trying to, get something everybody is happy with instead of this do everything together thing. So, but anyways, so we did have a meeting with them. We meet with the consultant every Wednesday.
Who's we now?
We is me and Joe, and actually city staff as well. So yeah, me, Joe, and city staff meet with the consultants every Wednesday. They're still waiting on some other information from one of their sub-consultants. So I'm not sure what kind of a plan, when this plan is going to be all compiled together. This meeting on the 25th is probably going to be what is in the regulations, what is in the what is being proposed in the the intergovernmental agreement, and then those areas of the plan that have been totally fleshed out. So you'll have, kind of finalized products of what they're hoping to accomplish, but maybe not like every issue has been issues been addressed. So what I'm saying is you're not going to have a complete plan at this meeting, but you will have the parts that have been totally fleshed out. I believe that's what I understand. But it's going to be a meeting where these the regulations and the intergovernmental agreement can be discussed and brought to your attention, and so you can start wrapping your head around that, which is going to be a huge part of what we're doing here.
And let's recess here for a moment, and I should have done that earlier.
Okay.
Deference to Mr. Kennedy.
No
Okay.
problem.
We need to sound so.
Tell you what,
Sounds. Never recessed.
You go out play on the swings. Back in session, let's recess. Okay, so Mr. Gertz, you were in the midst of just what we're going to get from the consultant, is that right, on the 25th?
yes,
The consultant's going to share with us their progress, it sounds like.
yes, so it's going to be a progress report, and also getting your thoughts on some of the regulatory schemes and things that they've came up with, and some of the ideas in the IGA, the intergovernmental agreement. So that's my understanding. So yeah, that's what we'll be seeing. And the idea is to get your ideas from that. They'll continue. I believe the next time we will meet, we'll have a complete package with all of everything. We'll have the plan, we'll have the regulations, and we'll have the intergovernmental agreement. And then we'll start working through that, all of that together, and start moving forward and all of that. So that's kind of where we're at. We're kind of.
So same questions we had earlier. Do you see that coming forward with a staff recommendation? Maybe that happens after we've kicked it around for a few meetings.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reviewing the documents right now, not the plan, because we don't have a plan, but I'm reviewing the regulations and the intergovernmental agreement, and I will send my comments to them. And then they will take those and do whatever they do. So hopefully a lot of my comments and the things I have will be already integrated into what we get. That doesn't mean I won't have any more comments, but I don't know. I feel like I have more opportunities to participate in some of this than some of these other plans that we're working on.
David, who has been responsible for fixing the boundaries? Or the boundary
Which boundary?
for the growth area management plan?
That was based on public input, basically. So they created a map. Well, they actually created 3 different maps, different.
Right, no, there's 3 different maps.
Yeah. And then we went out to public comment. They took in public comment. They looked at, or obviously they took staff comments or whatever, and then they made the map from that.
So the boundary, as it sits right now, those 3 maps was established by the consultants. Is that correct?
Yeah, ultimately with input from county, city
No, I
staff.
understand,
and all that, so.
but they're the ones that actually drew the line that we look at right now. So is there gonna be a chance to adjust that
Oh, yeah.
for us?
I mean, it has to go through this body before it gets to the Board of County Commissioners, so, yeah.
Oh, this is if I understand, this is a land use plan,
Yeah,
and it's subject to all the same rules.
and this is your baby. This is statutorily your job, you
That's
know?
what I'm thinking. No, we haven't seen anything yet.
So is the cap, honestly. So
And I don't want to have it happen that we get presented this thing and say, you got to approve it right now. Yeah, I understand it's not gonna
Not to
happen.
worry, not to worry.
Yep,
Well,
yep.
Contractual agreement.
You know, the sense of it is that the county and the city don't have the on-board horsepower to develop a plan of this scale, so they went out to RFP, and I was on the selection committee for the consultants, but if we're advisory to the Board of County Commissioners, they are advisory to us, and I think the hierarchy is dead clear. We hope that they come forward with something that isn't a surprise, and that's why my concern about the involvement of legal and planning staff in both the CAP update as well as this.
And I will say that the county attorney's office does have the regulations and the agreement as well. But we just got it like yesterday. So it's like, we're still working our way through all of that,
SALT
so.
proposed agreement.
Yes,
Right.
correct.
So we're clear.
Which is basically, I think, an agreement that was taken from Sheridan and then manipulated a little bit, so.
Just send that to Jennifer as well.
I think it just sent it to you, so if you want to send it to Jennifer, I can pass it on as well.
It is not unreasonable for this to be viewed as restoring the city to its review authority, of which it was deprived by the legislature a few years back. So walk us through that. My understanding is, obviously, the county would have to walk into this marriage with its eyes wide open, saying, I do. In which case, there are no statutory restrictions. Is that fair? The county can agree to give the city some authority.
Right. Yeah, and that's where.
Off the top of your head, without having researched it, is that a fair assumption?
If we enter into some sort of joint powers agreement or intergovernmental agreement contract, then yeah, but I mean, it's important to understand fully what we would be binding ourselves to.
Yes.
So yeah, the overlay zone was what's they're wanting to create an overlay zone just to regulate that area. So that won't really involve the cities so much, unless there's a provision in there that there's some kind of a joint review or whatever. Now, what is really going to impact the city and county's relationship is that intergovernmental agreement. That's where we could be giving authority or whatever to the city. And I can tell you the draft that we have, there's not a whole lot of authority given to the city in that. I mean, there's mostly review of plan or, subdivision applications or something. Staff will have an opportunity to comment and we need to make sure that we're following what we've adopted as regulations, because it'll be our regulations. It's not the city's regulations. But all that stuff, I mean, we have to make sure that we're looking at it and making sure that everybody's interested or adhered to, and we aren't giving up authority that we want to hold to ourselves. So.
One other little player here that how much has the university been involved in this discussion, and are they aware of it?
Yeah, absolutely. They're aware of it. We've met with them in some of the initial meetings. They're hard to get a hold of. I mean, we did finally find someone that wanted to be involved. If you look at the map that will be presented to you, all of the areas that their holdings outside of the outside of the city there, they're all, there's no zoning or anything associated with it. And that was at their request. Yeah. So yeah, the university has been involved.
And they did have somebody new that does their government affairs, just came on within the last month.
Okay.
Right? So I might even touch base with him and suggest he.
Where was that?
No, I don't have my Capital Club directory, but I can. I'll actually look.
But that's been, I know I've brought that comment to a number of these forums, that the university is a landowner. Like, not quite like any other, they would go strongly dispute that, but certainly, right, they're part of the county, and at a planning level, we don't need their permission. Obviously, if anything is going to be built, it would have to be done on a consensual basis. But it's not even clear that we would need a city-county agreement. I mean, the point is that the county, and I think we had that point of our previous meetings, the heavy lifting on here is the county, and we are being encouraged by our constituents, many of whom live in the city, to create appropriate zoning to address the growth of our community. So I don't know that we need a intergovernmental agreement at all. For the thing to go forward.
It certainly offers some advantages. I mean, it could be to very disadvantageous or very advantageous depending on what we agree to. But for instance, I think it's a good idea that we adopt building code standards with certain limits. I mean, if you're a prospective house builder, it'd be nice, house buyer, it'd be nice to know that your house actually conforms to certain standards that are desirable. And that's gonna cost some money. You have to have code, adopted and enforced, and the city's got inspectors right now, we don't. Okay. So there's an example where an agreement, how we're going to, if we're going to do, adopt code, how that's going to be provided for, inspected for, paid for, and all that. Again, you could create something that's very disadvantageous for something that's advantageous for the greater community. Excellent. And that's obviously the goal, that draft up something that's advantageous to the greater community, regardless of where the actual city county boundary is at any given point in time. We are one community.
Right. No, that's an excellent point, that we should combine resources. It isn't just a matter of which rules apply, but yeah. Excellent. Because in fairness, the city's got more money and more staff than we do, even though ours is better. Okay, I'm say we're watching that parade. I been a little skeptical of the kind of the sense of it is that everyone's going to see this and it's just going to be okay. Boy, we love it, and off we go. I see this as developing over the next year. Maybe that's ambitious. But how does it look to you, Mr. Planner?
Yeah, has there been sort of a timeline given?
Yeah, they want to be done by, I think, like January, February. But realistically, every time we go to a meeting, they don't have things ready that they think they're gonna have ready. So, I mean, just getting a document is, we don't have a plan to look at yet, so. And I'm okay with that. Really, I think we should take time to really do this right. And so, that's my perspective. And there's no way it's gonna be done before the end of the year. So why are we why are we pushing this thing through? So
As far as I'm concerned, you're welcome to take that forward. We all have lots of meetings to go to. We're all committed to doing our job as best we can, but I'm certainly not interested in having a meeting, just have a meeting. So if
I fully understand that.
if there's an opportunity for you to have put in your thought of, are we ready for this meeting? And thus the answer is unequivocal yes, then let's,
Right.
okay. Other thoughts on the growth area management plan? It's fascinating. I'm looking forward to learning a lot about zoning. We'll see. Others? Okay. Moving on to the end of our agenda. Commissioner comments. I had a couple of things that didn't fit on the agenda. Just remind us what happened to our zoning amendments. They went for the board last week, and they put them out for review and scheduled public hearing. Have we heard anything? Were there public comments received? Do we have any reason to think that those aren't simply sailing through their obligatory comment period? For the zoning amendments that we offer to the board?
I have not received any comments at this point, so it's been published.
So if they were to run their course, they would be on the county commissioner's agenda for
It's December 6th.
6th. Okay.
Which I will be
So we should check it out on that. Then again, looking forward, and you could answer or not as you please, there will be 2 terms expire on this commission end of the year. Commissioner Kennedy's and Commissioner Hanning's. Either of you want to share with us your intentions? As you please, should we be out recruiting candidates? Any thoughts on that you want to share? And don't feel any obligation to say anything. We're just wondering.
Right now, I'm planning on asking to re-up. I'm thinking that if I have one more term, that'd probably be it. That was the seat that I filled. That was how long they were on, and right now it's sad to say I'm besides David, I'm kind of the institution.
Oh, genuinely, you provide so many things, comments and consideration I have no clue about.
Okay, Ms. Hannon, you want to share anything with us?
Well, Mr. Chair, I do plan on reapplying, and I want to encourage Keith to not consider that he should be under term limits, because I do think that although that is a noble gesture that I know is a common practice in the county, that people feel like I've done 2 terms, I'm out of here. I do think that someone with your expertise and institutional knowledge really should consider waiving that self-imposed rule on a term limit and stick around. Thanks.
We do not have term limits in our bylaws except for chair, which is limited to 2 consecutive terms. Okay, that's just was what.
And having said that, I'm not going to be here next month.
Okay.
But I don't know exactly what my schedule is that evening, so.
We all understand that we have real jobs and real lives, and attendance every single meeting is not mandatory by any stretch. Other just comments for the commissioners that you'd like to bring forward, Ms. Platt?
I also know I won't be here. I don't know whether I'll go Zoom in or not. I'll be traveling.
Okay.
And I have a question to David.
Well, let's on that thought, both of you, let's keep Mr. Gertsch advised, because if we fail for a quorum, then we won't bother.
So we have 4 subdivision applications on that meeting, so it'd be really nice to have a quorum. But I don't know what Mr. Thine's up to. So.
And I won't be back until late Thursday.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and let's just keep track, and maybe if we need to move a meeting a couple of days.
Yeah, yeah.
But it certainly would be good not to postpone a bunch of applications.
Are you gonna be traveling now?
I'm gonna be traveling for a while. I'm not sure when we just go back. I know that I won't be here on this one. That's actually right in the middle.
I know I'm clear that afternoon.
But David, I have a question for you, just out of general cause, curiosity. Of all the things we've forwarded so far, with our recommendations to the county commissioners, have they approved everything, or has anything been denied, or?
Oh, everything that's been coming out of here has been approved.
Everything's been approved, okay.
Recently, yeah.
I wasn't sure.
I don't think there's anything that hasn't.
So is that good or bad?
That's good.
It's good. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have a respect for this planning zoning commission, so when they get an affirmative vote from you guys, or, yeah, move this on, or it looks good, they're okay with it usually, so.
Right. Well, that's certainly been my impression. And in fairness, most of the things for the, gosh, I know the last year have been unanimous, and that makes it really easy for them. But that's really our job, is to vet these things and knock off all the rough edges and put the polish on as best we can. Last year, we started the practice of having the report to the commission. If there was any dissension, to kind of explore it, we call it a minority report or something. I think that was healthy and that was appreciated. And then those, of course, they'll flag the issues that we couldn't come to agreement on. But yeah, my impression certainly is the same as Mr. Gertz, is that the commissioners rely on us to do them a good job, and through them the citizens of Albany County.
Well, I'm glad to hear that for all of us.
Other thoughts from the commission? Seeing none.
Mr. Chair, I just want to wish our county attorney good luck in front of the Supreme Court next week. Go get them. Hope it's
Thank
fun.
you. You're here. Second that.
Thank you.
I'm gonna watch. I'll even make faces.
It's only an audio stream.
Oh, it's just audio.
Yeah.
Gonna take the day off for oral arguments and go over to Shay.
Yeah, there we go.
I mean, I have to be there at 9, even though the argument is until 1:30.
Really?
Yeah, they do docket call in the morning, and everyone has to be present for that.
It is worth a day over there, just.
This will be fun.
No, I mean, it's, yeah.
I attended some of the hearings before the Supreme Court on these interstate water disputes, and I tell you, those attorneys going into that are they do weeks of preparation, and they do long trials and years.
Yeah, those.
Yeah, that's after they're done with the special master.
Oh yeah, no, when they're appealing the special
Yeah,
master, for
yeah.
example. Well, then,
Or a few.
and the State Attorneys General Association provides for elaborate training. We're on our next meeting, November 9, but now if we are in danger with quorum, do we want to talk about rescheduling that now?
That may be beneficial.
Since we're all sitting here.
The subdivision regulations as well.
I'm gonna look at a calendar here real quickly here.
Could you say that again, Matt? I missed.
Oh, I was thinking also with if we were going to be looking to put out for publication, the subdivision regulations, I would appreciate having as many members present as possible.
I mean, we actually have 5 Wednesdays. I just want to bump it back a Wednesday to the 16th, and
I don't want to, command everyone's schedule, but if it's acceptable to everyone, it'd be good to have us all together. Bumping it a week would not hurt my feelings. Would that work for you guys?
It works for me.
Schedule's clear, but I want to see where I'm at the day before to know I can be back for sure.
And I mean, Wednesdays are nothing special to my schedule, but
Well, I'm gonna be in California on the weekend of the 13th and 14th, the 12th and 13th. I know that. I'm gonna be traveling before that and after that. I absolutely could be here on the 2nd. That's too early for y'all, I'm sure. And I can make best efforts to be on a Zoom call. I just can't promise I don't know where I'm gonna be. You know.
well, Zoom participation is fine. And again,
Yeah, no, but I live where I'll be in the middle of the desert with no abilities to hook in or not, or I mean, I'll make a best effort, but I just can't promise anything.
A week later would work for me if I can't get back from Douglas on Tuesday, why we've got other issues going on.
Well, you know,
So,
we're not to where weather becomes an issue anymore.
Yeah.
I start taking my toothbrush when I leave town come first November.
I have a overnight bag that goes with me after the 1st October every year.
Well, should we slide to the 16th, understanding that Mr. Platt may or may not be available, but if the remaining three of
And
us.
I'll do the best I can.
Sure,
And
sure.
I should be able to do something, but I just can't make a promise.
We could move heaven and earth, but that would work for me. Tammy? Okay,
Yes, I'm available on the 16th and can commit to that meeting time to help with a quorum.
that work for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine with me.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if that requires a motion, I guess, if it's, the consensus is clear. Let's do that. I'll make it a chair's decision. Notice it appropriately. Okay, citizen comments. We have none beyond ourselves. We've exhausted ourselves, so yes, sir.
Can I just bring up one thing? So a reminder, October 25th and October 27th here in this room, 6 PM for the growth area plan on the 25th and then the cap on the 27th.
Both 6 o'clock.
Well, then 6 o'clock, yep. And then the one other thing is so the Environmental Advisory Committee sometime back was tasked by the county commissioners to look at wind and solar regulations. Well, they looked over those, they've made some adjustments and some amendments. They would like to come and present those to you at some point. I think the gentleman's name is Eric Krajenik. I don't know. What's that? What is he with? The Environmental Advisory Committee. But he would like to get him here in front of you to present those. I just wanted to bring it to you. Is there a preference on when he comes? This is, I mean, kind of your meeting. I mean, maybe I should just ask you, Mr. Chair, what your preference would be. I don't have nothing's been scheduled with them, but I know that Commissioner Gosar has wanted these moved on and in front of you at some point, but we do have a lot of things going on, so.
How long do you anticipate that presentation taking?
Oh, probably not very long, 10, 15 minutes or something.
Oh, well, that's,
Yeah.
I would certainly be receptive to, 15, 20 minutes of what our colleagues are up to.
Yeah, and is it okay if we maybe did it in December?
And
I think we have a pretty heavy meeting in November.
that sounds good to me. And the fact that we've got 2 more meetings yet this month. Yeah,
Yeah, okay, and I'll run it by him and see if Eric can make it that day. So yeah, if that's okay with you guys, then I'll plan on at least inviting him to that meeting, so.
appropriate.
That's all I have, sorry.
And as far as the agenda, that's typically assigned the chair, but certainly all members, if there's something you want to put on the agenda, bring it to David or myself, and we'll see if we can fit it in. But let's all try to be respectful of one another's time commitments. Okay, thank you. Are there any objections to adjournment? In the absence of objections, the chair can declare it so. Adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, Maura.
Thanks, Maura.
October 26th.
25th and 27th.